Welcome to Mark Noir Detectives.
Like, subscribe, and stay with the mystery. Tell me, which part of the world are you watching from?
I am your host, Nero Wolfe, and tonight we unveil a new chapter of crime, intrigue, and suspense.
Chapter 1. The slice that never moves. If you spend enough evenings in Manhattan drawing rooms, you learn there are two kinds of luxuries. The first kind is for use, like a drink you actually swallow or a chair you actually sit in. The second kind is for display, like a vase that never holds flowers or a smile that never reaches the eyes. On East 68th Street, in a co-op with a doorman who looked like he had been born in a uniform and would die in it, I met a luxury that belonged to a third category, something meant to be eaten, deliberately not eaten, and made important by not being touched. It was a slice of cake, not a crumb was missing, not a frosting curl disturbed. It sat on a white plate with a thin gold rim, positioned with the confidence of a centerpiece. Around it, people moved and laughed and traded the usual Manhattan chatter, as if the slice were a lamp that could not be turned off. So everyone pretended not to notice the glare. I noticed it because that is what I am paid for. One way or another, I had come to the party as a guest, which is always a mild insult to my professional dignity, at the office on West 35th Street. I am used to being announced with purpose. Here I was announced with a surname and a bright tone, as if I were an accessory that matched the hostess's dress. "Mr. Goodwin, how nice of you," said Mrs. Marjorie Kincaid, and her hand was cool and dry and firm, the way a successful woman's hand often is when she has made a practice of not needing anything from anybody. She did need something. Of course, they always did. They just did not lead with it, not in rooms where the ceiling had medallions, and the air smelled faintly of gardenias and money. I got my first look at the slice as she guided me past a table that held a punch bowl, a silver tray of canapes, and the cake already cut. The remaining slices were arranged like sections of a tidy chart. All but one were missing from plates and mouths. One remained standing alone, perfect and untouched. Mrs. Kincaid's eyes moved past it the way a person's eyes move past a bruise she has decided not to mention. The room was full, not crowded, because crowded is what happens when a host miscalculates. This was controlled. There were perhaps 20 people, enough to call it a gathering, and not enough to call it a mob. The men wore jackets that had been pressed recently, and expressions that had been pressed for years. The women wore perfume and competence. I saw a couple of younger ones, probably there to learn the ritual of being seen, and a couple of older ones, there to confirm that they still were. I took a glass of something that tasted like fruit and discretion. I smiled in the right places. I listened. Listening is easy. The tricky part is keeping your face from saying, out loud, what your brain is thinking. At the far end of the room, a man with a high forehead and a cautious grin was telling a story about a new restaurant, and making it sound as if he had conquered a foreign nation. Near him, a thin woman with bright eyes and a laugh too loud for her frame was encouraging him, not because she cared about his restaurant, but because she cared about being seen caring. I did not care about any of them yet. I cared about the slice. It was carrot cake, I decided, with a cream frosting applied by someone with a steady hand. On top, a pecan half sat like a small brown crown. The wedge was cut clean, at a precise angle, as if the knife had been guided by a ruler. If you are going to fear a slice of cake, that is the kind to fear. Anything sloppy is easier to dismiss. I drifted closer, using the old trick of appearing to be interested in the table arrangement. My glass hovered near the plate, my eyes hovered over the cake. No one reached for it. A woman's hand moved toward the table for a napkin, paused, and then changed its mind and went for a canap, fay instead. A man stepped close enough to see the slice, swallowed, and moved away. Their motions were subtle, the kind that would be missed by anyone who had not been trained by years of watching Nero Wolfe dismiss lies with a grunt. I let my gaze travel to the hostess. Mrs. Kincaid was speaking to a couple near the window, her profile composed, but there was a tightness around her mouth, a small pulling down at one corner, like a thread being tugged. That was not coincidence. That was restraint. "Lovely cake," I said to her when she came within range. She gave a short laugh. "It should be. I paid enough for it." "You did not pay enough to make people afraid of it." Her eyes flicked. "Afraid, is that what you think? It is what I see." She did something then that confirmed my suspicion. She reached for her glass and took a sip. It was a nervous gesture, and nervous gestures in a room like that are like fingerprints. They do not belong unless something has touched them. "I asked you here," she said, lowering her voice, "because you work for Mr. Wolfe." "Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes I work for the world's supply of trouble, and Mr. Wolfe is merely the distributor." That earned me a smile that might have been genuine if it had not been so fast. "I need discretion," she said. "Discretion," I said. "In a room full of people trained to pretend they do not notice, that is convenient." Her eyes hardened for an instant. "I am not pretending." "Then you are ahead of them." She took a breath. "That slice," she said, and for the first time she looked directly at it. Her gaze made the thing heavier. It was still just cake, but now it had gravity. "Every week," she said, "at the end of these gatherings, there is one slice left." "One slice?" I repeated. "Always one," she said. "Not always the same flavor, but always one slice. And it is always untouched. No one will take it. No one will even ask me for it. It just sits there until I have the staff remove it." "Maybe your guests are watching their figures," I said. "Do not be foolish," she said sharply, and then softened. "They take other desserts. They take everything else. It is only that one slice. And you want me to find out why?" "I want you to make it stop," she said. That was a different wording, and it made me look at her more carefully. Mrs. Marjorie Kincaid was not a woman who let things happen without having a plan, unless those things happened to her. "Why does it matter?" I asked. Her eyes moved toward the far side of the room, where a man stood near a bookshelf. Alone, he was in his 40s, with hair cut with care and a posture that suggested he had once been in the military, or had merely studied the posture of men who had. His expression was blank, but not empty. It was the kind of blank that watches. "That is Dexter Harlan," she said. "He comes every week. He never misses." "Is he your friend?" "He is my board member," she said, and the way she said it made board sound like a weight. "What is your board for?" "My foundation," she said, "the Kincaid Civic Arts Fund." I nodded. I had heard of it. Mrs. Kincaid had made a fortune in real estate and spent some of it buying respectability. "It is a common New York hobby." "Mr. Harlan," I said, watching him, "does not look like a man who enjoys cake." "He does not enjoy anything," she said. "That is not the point." She hesitated, and for a second, the composure slipped enough to let me see the woman underneath. She was tired. Not physically. Tired in the way people get when they have been awake to the same problem for too long. "I did not notice at first," she said. "The first time it happened, I thought it was chance. The second time, I thought it was odd. The third time, I realized it was deliberate, and then I realized something else." What she swallowed. "The slice is always placed," she said, "in the same spot on the table. That is your doing, not theirs." "No," she said. "I asked the staff to vary it. I asked them to put the cake on the sideboard, on the coffee table, on the console by the door. Every time, by the end of the night, the remaining slice is here, right here." That did it. A slice of cake that migrates without being eaten is not a dieting issue. It is either a prank, a superstition, or a message. "Who handles the plates?" I asked. "The staff," she said. "My housekeeper, my server, the caterer's assistant, people who have been in this apartment for years." "People can learn new tricks," I said. Her lips tightened. "This is not a trick," she said. "It is a warning." I looked at her. "A warning about what?" She opened her mouth, closed it, and then said, "About what happened 3 months ago." I waited. Silence makes people feel it. "A man died," she said, "at one of these gatherings. That changed the room. The music did not change, the chatter did not change, and the cake did not change. But my mind did. A death puts weight on details. It turns decorative objects into potential weapons. Who was he? I asked. His name was Alan Voss, she said. He was a donor, a patron, a man who liked to make speeches about art while never buying any unless it came with a plaque. How did he die? She hesitated again. They said, it was his heart, she said. He collapsed. Ambulance. Hospital. Dead. They, I said. Who is they? The doctors, she said. The police did not get involved. There was no reason. But you think there was. Her eyes did not leave the slice. Alan Voss ate cake, she said. I stared at her. That is your connection. He ate a slice, she said. He took it from that plate, from that spot. He joked about being the one who broke the pattern. He laughed. He ate it. 40 minutes later, he was on the floor. In my head, Wolfe made a sound. Wolfe does not waste sound. But if he had been there, he would have let out one of his throat noises. That means you have brought me a problem that is either trivial or disgusting. And I have not yet decided which. Did you tell anyone this? I asked. I told the police officer, who came to take a report at the hospital, she said. He looked at me as if I had suggested the cake had shot him. He said, heart attacks happen. He said grief makes people see patterns. He said I should rest. You did not rest. No, she said. I watched, and every week that slice was left. Until tonight, I said. Until tonight, she agreed, and her fingers tightened around her glass. If someone eats it again, I do not know what will happen. If no one eats it, I do not know what it means. But I know it is meant for me, or for someone else, I said. She glanced at me. Sharp, do not try to make this clever. I am not trying, I said. I am working. I let my eyes travel the room again. 20 guests, a couple of staff moving quietly, and one slice of cake that had turned into a loaded pistol nobody wanted to touch. Dexter Harlan was still by the bookshelf. He was watching, and now I noticed he was watching the cake table. Near the sofa, a young woman with dark hair and a tense mouth was holding a plate with a small pastry. She was not eating it. She was looking at the cake table with the expression of a person looking at a closed door behind which something unpleasant waits. There was an older man with heavy eyebrows, the type that makes you think of a lawyer or an accountant talking to a woman in pearls. His laugh was polite, but his eyes were not. His eyes slid to the cake and away like a hand passing a hot surface. If this was a warning, it had an audience. Who knew Alan Voss well? I asked. Mrs. Kincaid's voice lowered further. He was on my board, she said. Dexter knew him. The others knew him. Some liked him. Some did not. And you, I said. Did you like him? Her mouth tightened. I tolerated him. That kind of answer means yes. She had reason not to like him, but the reason is private. Why are you telling me now? I asked. Because I cannot go to the police with a slice of cake, she said. Because I cannot accuse anyone without evidence. Because I am tired of being afraid in my own home. That last line was the first truly honest thing she had said, and it had no decoration on it. Mr. Wolfe does not leave his home, I said. I know, she said quickly. That is why I asked you. You can observe. You can talk. You can do whatever you do. Then you can tell Mr. Wolfe, and he can think. It was a good summary of our method, though it made me feel like a messenger pigeon. Do you want me to stop someone from eating it? I asked. I want you to find out who is making it happen, she said, and why, and if there is danger. I looked at the slice again. The frosting gleamed under the lamp. It was innocent enough to be insulting. All right, I said. First, I need to know what kind of cake Alan Voss ate. Carrot, she said, just like tonight. Same bakery. Yes, she said. It is from a place on Madison. They deliver. Who ordered it? I did, she said. I always do. So if it was poisoned, I said, it could have been at the bakery during delivery or in your kitchen. Her eyes narrowed. You think my staff would kill someone in my apartment? I think anyone can do anything if they have a reason, I said. And I think the reason is what Mr. Wolfe will want. At the mention of Wolfe, her expression shifted slightly, as if she were picturing him, the large man in his office chair, the orchids above him, the brownstone around him like a fortress. People who have never met Wolfe often imagine him as a kind of legend. People who have met him learn he is worse, because he is real. "I will pay," she said abruptly. I nodded. "That will comfort him." She moved away then, called by another guest, and I was left with a mission, a slice of cake and 20 people pretending to be relaxed. I did what I always do first, in an unfamiliar room. I found the staff. The housekeeper was a woman named Pilar, small, efficient, with eyes that missed nothing but showed nothing. The server was a young man with the quiet glide of someone trained to be invisible. The caterer's assistant was a nervous girl with flushed cheeks and a habit of smoothing her apron as if it were a shield. I approached the caterer's assistant, because nervous people leak information. "Busy night," I said. "Yes, sir," she said. "Cake looks good." She glanced toward the table. Her cheeks reddened. "Yes, sir. Do you have more?" I asked, casual. "No, sir," she said quickly. "That is, the cake is cut, sir." "Who cut it?" I asked. Her eyes jumped. "The kitchen," she said. "Pilar in the kitchen." Pilar was across the room, watching the guests with the guarded expression of a woman who had seen too many rich people break glassware and pretend it was a joke. I walked to her. "Mrs. Kincaid's party's always like this?" I asked. Pilar's gaze was steady. "Yes, sir." "Always one slice left?" I asked. Her eyes flicked. "Just once." "Sometimes." That was a lie, and it was not even a good one. "Sometimes," I repeated. "That is a convenient sometimes." She tightened her mouth. "I work," she said. "I do not count cake." "You move it," I said. Her eyes sharpened. "No, sir." "Then who does?" I do not know. I believed she did know, or believed she thought she knew, and that was enough. Across the room, Dexter Harlan began moving toward the table. His steps were unhurried, but his direction was direct. He held a plate in one hand, empty, and his other hand was free. I watched him, and I felt a small tightening in my own stomach. I do not like being surprised by danger. I prefer danger that has been announced, scheduled, and served with beer. Harlan reached the table and stopped. He looked at the slice. His expression did not change, but his eyes did something that made me think of a man reading a sign he did not like. Then he did something I had not expected. He turned his empty plate upside down and set it over the slice like a lid. It was a neat motion. It hid the cake completely. The plate settled with a soft clink. The room did not stop. No one gasped. But a ripple passed through the guests. It was not visible. Not to anyone who did not know how to watch. It was in the tightening of shoulders, the sudden brightening of laughter, the quick glance and the quick look away. Mrs. Kincaid saw it too. She froze for a second, then recovered and moved toward Harlan. I moved too, because if the slice was a message, Harlan had just answered it. As I approached, I saw something else. The upside-down plate was not centered. One edge sat slightly higher, as if it were balanced on something, a fork. The fork's tines were under the rim, keeping the plate from sealing completely. A small gap remained, like a mouth that refused to close. That was either childish or careful. With Harlan, I guessed careful. Mrs. Kincaid arrived at the table with her smile on, the one she used for donors and photographers. "Dexter," she said, airy. "What are you doing?" Harlan turned his head. Up close, his face was the kind that had learned to be still. Still faces are dangerous. You never know what is moving behind them. "Preventing," he said. "Preventing what?" He looked at her. "You know." Her smile did not flicker, but her eyes did. "Remove your plate," she said. "No," he said. That single word hit the room harder than a shout would have. It was the kind of refusal you do not give in a room like this unless you are sure of your footing. I stepped in as if I had been summoned. "Mr. Harlan," I said friendly. "This is a party. We cover cake with glass domes, not dinner plates." His eyes found me. They were pale, cold, and direct. "You are Wolfe's man," he said. His assistant, I said. Sometimes his valet, depending on his mood. I am not in the mood for humor, he said. Then you are at the wrong party, I said. Mrs. Kincaid's voice tightened. Dexter, you are embarrassing me. I am saving you, he said. And for the first time there was emotion in his voice. Not much, but enough to be heard. Or I am saving someone. It depends on who is foolish. A couple of guests pretended not to listen harder. That is a skill in Manhattan. You can pretend not to listen while absorbing every syllable. The young woman with dark hair had moved closer. I could see a pulse jumping in her throat. Mr. Harlan, I said, if you want to stop someone from eating the cake, you could stand here and glare at them. This plate business is dramatic. I want it documented, he said. Documented, I repeated. Yes, he said. If it is covered, it cannot be claimed that it was offered. He simply stood, his hand resting on the upside-down plate, as if it were the lid of a trap. I made my voice lighter. Dexter, if you have a concern about food safety, the modern solution is a call to the caterer, not a public scene. The caterer is not the issue, he said. Then what is? He looked at me, and I felt something shift. It was not fear exactly. It was the recognition that I had stepped into a fight that had been going on before I arrived. The issue, Harlan said, is obligation. Mrs. Kincaid's jaw tightened. Do not start, she said. I will start when I choose, he said. You have been ignoring it. Ignoring what? I thought. A debt, a threat, a promise. Any of those can be stapled to a slice of cake. A man with heavy eyebrows approached, his face arranged in an expression of concerned amusement. Marjorie, he said, is everything all right? She turned her smile on him. Of course, Harold. Dexter is being theatrical. Harold, the lawyer or accountant type, the name fit. Harlan's eyes cut to him. Theatrical, he said. That is what you call it when someone refuses to play. Harold's eyebrows lifted. Refuses to play what? Harlan did not answer him either. He kept his attention on Mrs. Kincaid, and it was the attention of a man who knows where the leverage is. The young woman with dark hair spoke, and her voice was thinner than it should have been. Dexter, she said, please. He finally looked at her. You, he said, you are the reason. Her face drained. Mrs. Kincaid turned sharply. Lila, she said, go sit down. So the young woman was Lila. I stored it. Harlan's hand tightened on the plate. No one eats it, he said. Louder now. Not tonight. Not ever again. Mrs. Kincaid's smile cracked at the edge. You cannot control my guests. I can control the cake, he said. I leaned in slightly, so my voice could be heard by him and not by the whole room. Mr. Harlan, if your goal is safety, may I suggest we remove the slice to the kitchen? He stared at me. Remove it, he said slowly. And you remove the evidence? Evidence of what? He did not answer, but his eyes flicked toward the fork under the rim of the plate. The fork was placed deliberately, keeping the seal imperfect. Air could get in. And if something had been done to the cake, a seal might trap something, a smell, a vapor. That sounded far-fetched. But then, so did murder by dessert. Pilar appeared beside us, her face composed. Madam, she said to Mrs. Kincaid, shall I clear the table? Mrs. Kincaid's eyes jumped to her. Not now, she snapped, then recovered. Thank you, Pilar. Harlan's eyes went to Pilar. You, he said. Pilar's gaze did not drop. Sir, where was this cake before it was put here? In the kitchen, Pilar said. Who was with it? I was, Pilar said. And the caterer girl. Harlan's mouth tightened. And anyone else? No, Pilar said. I watched her. She was lying, or she was proud. Sometimes the difference is small. Harold cleared his throat. Marjorie. Perhaps we should, he began. A sound cut him off. It was not loud. It was the kind of sound that would be missed if you were not already listening for trouble. A soft scraping from beneath the table, like metal against wood. Harlan's eyes went down. My eyes followed. The fork under the rim of the plate moved. Not much. Just enough to change the gap, Lila made a small noise, almost a squeak. Mrs. Kincaid's hand flew to her throat. I did not make a noise. I moved. I bent, quick, and looked under the table. A hand was there, a hand in a dark sleeve, fingers curled around the fork handle, pulling it slowly. The wrist was thin. The sleeve was black. The hand froze when it saw my face. I grabbed the wrist. The person jerked. The tablecloth shifted. A couple of guests gave little cries that were quickly swallowed by laughter, the kind of laughter people use when they do not know what else to do. "Now," I said, and my voice was pleasant, because I had learned that a pleasant voice can do more damage than an angry one. "We are having a party." The hand tried to pull away. I tightened my grip. "Come out," I said. The person slid from under the table with the awkwardness of a cat caught in public. It was the caterer's assistant, the nervous girl, her cheeks, now the color of raw meat, her eyes wide with panic. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Kincaid demanded. The girl's mouth opened, closed, opened again. She said. Harlan's face did not change. "She is doing what she was told," he said. I let go of the girl's wrist but kept my body between her and the table. "Who told you?" I asked her. She looked at Mrs. Kincaid, then at Harlan, then at Harold, then at Lila. Her eyes were pong balls bouncing off faces. "Speak," Harlan said. And there was a flat force in it. The girl began to tremble. "I was told," she whispered, "to take the fork away when everyone was watching the other side of the room. I was told to let the plate settle." "Why?" I asked. Her eyes filled. "So it would be sealed," she said. "Sealed," Mrs. Kincaid repeated, and her voice was now very quiet. Harlan's hand lifted from the plate. "Do you see?" he said to Mrs. Kincaid. "Summoner wants it closed." Harold's face tightened. "This is absurd," he said. "Is it?" Harlan asked. Mrs. Kincaid's voice turned sharp. "Who told you?" she demanded of the girl. The girl's lips moved. No sound came. Then she said, barely audible, "Mr. Bly." Harold stiffened. "Who?" The girl swallowed. "Mr. Bly from the bakery, he called. He said if I wanted to keep my job, I would do it." That hit me with a different kind of weight. If a bakery man is issuing threats, either he is an amateur criminal with a taste for drama, or someone is using him as a messenger. Harlan's eyes went cold. "Bly," he said. "So we have a name." Mrs. Kincaid gripped the edge of the table. "Why would a bakery man?" she began. Then stopped. "Because someone paid him, because someone scared him, because someone is playing games with a rich woman and her guests." "Pilar," Mrs. Kincaid said, "take her to the kitchen." The girl turned as if she might faint. Pilar's hand closed on her elbow with professional firmness. "No," Harlan said. Mrs. Kincaid spun. "Excuse me, she stays here," he said. "If she leaves, she is coached. If she leaves, she disappears. If she leaves, you lose your chance." "My chance for what?" Mrs. Kincaid snapped. "For the truth," Harlan said. I looked at him more carefully. He was not just an alarm bell, he was invested. He was too sure, too prepared. The upside-down plate, the fork, the talk of documentation, all of it. That meant he had been waiting for this moment, which meant someone else had been waiting too. I glanced around the room. People were watching now, openly, because the polite fiction had been broken. A couple of women were whispering. A man was inching toward the door, the kind of man who leaves early when things turn messy because he has a reputation to protect. Lila's face was tight with fear. Harold's mouth was compressed to a line, and Mrs. Kincaid, the hostess, stood very still, as if stillness might hold the room together. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, and her tone was formal now. "This has gone far enough. I want this handled privately." "Private handling is my specialty," I said. "But I have a question first." She stared. "What happens?" I asked, "if the plate seals completely?" Nobody answered. The silence was thick. Then Harlan said, "Summoner collapses." Lila made a choking sound. Harold's eyes widened. Mrs. Kincaid's face went white. I looked at Harlan. You know that. He nodded once. Because it has happened before, he said. Not here, Mrs. Kincaid whispered. Harlan's eyes stayed on the plate. It happened to Voss, he said. Not from eating it, from opening it. That gave me a jolt. Opening it. I said. Harlan nodded. He was curious, he said. He thought it was a joke. He took the cover off. He leaned in, smelling it, boasting about breaking the pattern. Then he laughed. Then he coughed. Then he died. Mrs. Kincaid's voice was a thin thread. He ate it. Harlan shook his head. He did not, he said. He never had time. That is why there was no crumbs on his plate. That is why the slice was still clean when the ambulance arrived. You told yourself he ate it because that is what made sense, but it did not happen. My mind began to move. A sealed plate. A fork used as a spacer, a cover that must not settle completely. Something inside the space between plate and cake that does harm when contained. A chemical vapor, perhaps released when the cover is lifted after being sealed. It was clever, if true. It was also horrifying because it turns a party table into a booby trap. Why carrot cake? I asked. Harlan's eyes flicked to me. Because it masks odor, he said. Spices, sweetness, cream. Harold barked a short laugh that sounded forced. This is insane, he said. You are accusing a bakery of murder by aroma. Not the bakery, I said. Somebody using the bakery. Mrs. Kincaid's hands began to shake. She set her glass down carefully, as if it might explode. Mr. Goodwin, she said, I want you to take this to Mr. Wolfe tonight. I was already planning to, I said. Harlan looked at me. Tell Wolfe, he said, that the pattern is not superstition. It is procedure, it is a signal, and it is about the foundation. The foundation, I repeated. He nodded. There was a vote, he said. Harold's face went rigid. Dexter, he said sharply. Stop talking. Harlan ignored him. A vote that Voss would have lost, he said. A vote he could not allow. A vote that would have cut off money and exposed names. Lila's eyes squeezed shut, and a tear escaped, sliding down her cheek. That was a confession without words. Mrs. Kincaid looked at Lila. What do you know? She demanded. Lila whispered. Nothing. But her voice said everything. I looked at the upside-down plate, the fork, the cake trapped beneath like a secret. I could almost see Wolfe's expression when I described this to him, the way his eyes would narrow, the way he would say, with contempt, that people who choose indirect murder deserve direct punishment. Mr. Harlan, I said, if the danger is in lifting the cover after it seals, why did you cover it at all? Because I want them to act, he said. Who is them? His pale eyes met mine. The person who needs it sealed, he said. The person who wants the trap set. If they do not try, we do not find them. Harold said low and dangerous, you are gambling with people's lives. Harlan did not blink. People's lives have already been gambled, he said. Mrs. Kincaid's voice cracked. Stop it, all of you. This is my home. And it was Voss's death, Harlan said. That was when a new sound entered the room, and it was the sound that makes every New Yorker look toward the door, no matter how high the ceiling or how expensive the rug buzzer. The doorman's call system. Mrs. Kincaid stared at it as if it were a verdict. Pillar moved toward the intercom, but Mrs. Kincaid lifted a hand to stop her. She crossed the room herself, her posture rigid. Yes, she said into the speaker. A muffled voice answered. I could not hear the words, but I saw Mrs. Kincaid's face change. The color drained, then returned in a flush. She looked back at us, at the guests at the table with the covered slice. Then she said into the speaker, very carefully, send him up. I walked closer. Who is it? I asked quietly. She swallowed. A man, she said. He says he has a message about the cake. Harlan's jaw tightened. The messenger, he said. Harold muttered something that sounded like a prayer without faith. Mrs. Kincaid looked at me. Now you see, she said, and her composure for the first time was gone. It is not coincidence. It is ritual, and it is coming into my apartment. The elevator door at the end of the hall clicked. The sound carried even through the music, even through the chatter that had fallen to a murmur. Everyone heard it. Everyone waited. I found myself thinking, as I often do at the start of trouble, that Wolfe would hate this. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was theatrical. Wolfe prefers murder that is simple enough to be understood and complex enough to be proved. He dislikes performance. The door opened. A man stepped into the room, and he carried a pastry box. It was white cardboard, tied with string. He smiled, and it was the kind of smile that belongs on a face that has never had to clean up its own mess. "Mrs. Kincaid," he said, loud enough for the room, compliments of Madison Avenue, fresh delivery. He looked at the cake table, at the upside-down plate, and his smile widened. "And," he added, "instructions. Chapter 2, Manners with Teeth." The man with the pastry box had the sort of confidence you see in people who have never carried anything heavier than their own certainty. He stopped just inside the foyer, as if he owned the threshold, letting the room look at him. That was deliberate. A messenger who is merely delivering keeps moving. This fellow held the white box at chest height, like an offering, the string bow neat and smug, and he smiled as if he had been invited to do a small trick. Mrs. Kincaid went toward him with her hostess face firmly back in place, though it was stretched tight like silk over a bruise. "Good evening," she said. "I did not order anything." "You did not," he agreed. His voice was smooth, the kind that sells insurance and heartbreak. "But you have a continuing account with the bakery." "Yes, standing orders, weekly." Mrs. Kincaid's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "Name's Paul Bly," he said, and the way he said it made the name sound like a brand. "I represent Madison Sweets. We like to take care of our clients." Harold, the heavy-browed man, moved closer as if drawn by legal instinct. Dexter Harlan did not move, but his pale eyes tracked Bly like a sight line. I stayed near the cake table because if there was trouble, that table was the address. Bly's gaze slid to the upside-down plate covering the slice. His smile widened, just enough to show teeth. "Ah," he said. "You are ahead of me. That saves time." "Time for what?" Mrs. Kincaid asked. "For the instruction," Bly said. He set the pastry box on a console table, untied the string with practiced fingers, and opened the lid. Inside were 6 small cupcakes, each one topped with a swirl of frosting. They were pretty, expensive, and completely irrelevant. Bly reached under them and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He held it up for everyone to see, like a man showing a prize. Then, with a flourish that belonged on a stage, he extended it to Mrs. Kincaid. She did not take it. "You do not mind," I said, and kept my tone friendly, because friendly is the best wrapper for a pointed question. "I am Mr. Goodwin." Bly's eyes met mine. "From the famous brownstone," he said. "From the side that pays attention," I said. He chuckled softly, as if we were sharing a joke. "Then you will appreciate the brevity." I unfolded the paper. It was typed, 1 sentence, no signature, "Do not uncover what is covered. Let it remain." That was it. No threats, no poetry, no explanation. Just a rule delivered like a commandment. I handed it to Mrs. Kincaid. This time she took it, but her fingers were stiff. Harold craned his neck. "What is that?" "Nothing," Mrs. Kincaid said too fast. "It is something," Harlan said flatly. "It is an order." Bly nodded. "You could call it that. The bakery is concerned, you understand. Concerned about liability. Concerned about accidents. People have sensitive systems these days. Allergies, reactions." Harold's lips thinned. "If you are implying there is a contaminant, you should be speaking to the health department." Bly's smile did not falter. "I am implying that some things are best handled with manners." That phrase landed like a small slap. Manners is what rich people use to pretend they have claws. Bly was saying the claws were real. Mrs. Kincaid straightened. "Mr. Bly, you are in my home. I will not be instructed." Bly tilted his head. You can do as you like, but I advise you to follow the instruction. It will save you trouble. Trouble from whom? I asked. Bly looked at me as if I had asked him to name God. From consequences, he said. Consequences do not deliver cupcakes, I said. People do. Who told you to come here? His smile sharpened, and for a moment the smoothness fell away enough to show irritation. I came because the bakery has a relationship with this household. You came because you called the caterer's assistant earlier and threatened her job, I said. The room tightened. Lila made a small sound. Pillar, standing near the doorway to the kitchen, went very still. Bly's eyes flicked. A tiny tell. Did I? He said. You did, I said. That is sloppy. Mr. Wolfe dislikes sloppy. At the mention of Wolfe, Bly's smile returned to its original shape, as if he had put the mask back on. Mr. Wolfe would not enjoy this little social exercise. No, I agreed, which is why I am here. Mrs. Kincaid's voice turned hard. Mr. Bly, leave. Bly hesitated, then shrugged as if leaving was part of his performance. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out a business card, which he placed on the console beside the cupcakes. If you have questions, call the bakery. We pride ourselves on service. Harlan's voice cut in. Tell your employer that the plate stays. Bly. Bly's eyes met Harlan's. The smile dimmed. Careful, he said. Not loud, not dramatic. Just careful, like a knife placed on a table. Then he turned and walked out, letting the door close behind him with a soft final click. For 2 seconds, no one spoke. 20 people, dressed and perfumed and trained in social noise, sat in silence, because silence is what happens when the rules have been exposed. Then Harold laughed. It was too quick and too loud, like a man trying to put a lid on a pot that has started to boil. Well, he said, that was absurd. 3 other people laughed with him, too fast and too loud, as if the sound could drown the memory of Bly's sentence. I watched those 3. When a room laughs at the wrong time, it is not humor. It is fear rehearsing. Mrs. Kincaid lifted her chin. Music, she said sharply. Summon and turn it up. A guest near the stereo complied, as if grateful for a task. The volume rose, a smooth number that made the room sound civilized again. But the cake table remained the center of gravity, and the guests orbited it the way pigeons circle a dropped pretzel, close and hopeful and never landing on that one wedge. The upside. Down plate sat over the slice, like a lid over a secret. The fork still held one edge slightly open, keeping the seal imperfect. It was not much of a gap, but it might as well have been a door propped open with a chair. I positioned myself so I could see the table, the kitchen doorway, and most of the room. It was not as comfortable as Wolfe's chair, but it would do. Within 5 minutes, the first orbit began. A woman in a red dress drifted to the table, plate in hand, then stopped as if she had remembered a different appointment. She pretended to be fascinated by the napkins. Her eyes flicked to the plate, then to Harlan, then away. A man with a silver tie clip came closer and joked. I suppose that one is reserved for royalty, and laughed too loudly at his own line. His laugh was answered by 2 women who laughed, as if their throats were tight. A younger fellow, maybe 30, with a chin that had never been refused, stepped forward and said, I will take it, if nobody else will. The room froze for a fraction of a second. It was as if someone had turned off the oxygen. Then, as if a cue had been given, 3 people laughed. Not 1, not 2, 3, too fast, too loud. The young man flushed and backed away, pretending it was a joke, pretending he had not felt the room's teeth. Manners with teeth, that was what it was. The rule was enforced socially. Nobody had to say, do not touch. The room itself said it, with a chuckle that sounded like a warning. Protection is admission, Wolfe had said on the phone, calm as a locked door. People protect what matters. They also protect what incriminates them. I needed to know who was protecting the slice. Harlan hovered within striking distance, making no secret of his vigilance. He was an obvious protector. That could be genuine, or it could be cover. A man who wants to steer attention away from himself will sometimes stand directly under the spotlight and dare you to notice him. Harold stayed on the opposite side of the room, but his eyes came to the table too often. He pretended to be engaged in conversation, but his gaze kept taking measurements. Lila remained near the sofa, hands clasped tight, watching the covered slice like a child watching a storm through glass. She did not laugh at jokes. She did not speak unless spoken to. She looked as if she had been told that if she moved, something would break. Mrs. Kincaid moved through the room with practiced ease, but she did not approach the table. The hostess avoided her own centerpiece, that told me the slice was not just a threat, it was a humiliation. A private fear turned public, which is the worst kind in a room full of people. Pilar, the housekeeper, moved in and out of the kitchen doorway, eyes sweeping the guests with restrained intensity. She was watching not for spilled drinks, but for hands. She did not like this either, but she was handling it the way staff handle everything, by tightening their grip on order. I wanted names, and I wanted them attached to actions, so I started collecting them the way you collect stamps, by making small talk and watching what people do when they think they are not being watched. The man with the high forehead, who had been boasting about restaurants, turned out to be Grant Moffat, a gallery owner who spoke in announcements. The thin woman with the loud laugh was Elaine Rook, whose job was listed as consultant, which means she consulted her own advantage. The woman in pearls was Mrs. Darla Chisholm, and the man with the silver tie clip was Ken Weller, an advertising man with a smile that could sell a refrigerator to a penguin. None of those names mattered yet. What mattered was their behavior. When Ken Weller joked about royalty, his eyes went straight to Mrs. Kincaid, not to the cake. He was testing her reaction. That made him more than a bystander. Darla Chisholm laughed at nothing, and then went quiet when the topic drifted near the foundation. That made her a listener. Grant Moffat tried twice to steer conversation away from Alan Voss, and each time he did it with the anxious speed of a man batting away a fly. That made him protective of a memory. Elaine Rook kept glancing toward Lila, as if checking that Lila was still there. That made Elaine either a friend or a guard. While I was collecting, Harold made his move. He approached the cake table under the cover of conversation, drifting close as if pulled by curiosity. He held a drink in one hand and a napkin in the other, and wore the expression of a man who had come for a polite snack. But his eyes were on the fork. He leaned in slightly, and his napkin hand moved toward the rim of the upside-down plate, toward the gap. I stepped beside him with the friendly smile I use when I am about to stop someone from doing something foolish. "Careful," I said. Harold jolted. "Goodwin," he said too quickly. I was only admiring the tableware, I supplied. "Yes," he said, "exactly." "Your admiration is noted," I said. "Keep your hands to yourself." His face tightened. "You are taking this too seriously." "Someone is," I said. "And it is not you, which suggests you know you can afford not to." His eyes sharpened. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I am accusing you of reaching," I said. "The rest is optional." He drew back, smile returning like a curtain. "Of course," he said lightly. "I forget how dramatic you private investigators can be." "I am not dramatic," I said. "I am practical." He walked away, drink sloshing slightly. The slosh told me more than his words did. Harlan watched the exchange from 3 feet away. His face remained still, but his eyes were narrow. "Good," he said quietly. "Good what?" I asked. "You stopped him," Harlan said. "Why do you care if Harold touches a fork?" I asked. Harlan's gaze slid to the covered plate. "Because he wants it sealed," he said. "That is your theory," I said. "It is not theory," Harlan said. "It is pattern." I filed that away. Men like Harlan use the word pattern when they mean control. I turned toward Lila. She was still near the sofa, and Elaine Rook hovered a few feet away like a nervous satellite. I approached as casually as a man can approach someone who looks as if she might shatter. "Miss," I said, and kept it gentle, "I am Archie Goodwin." Lila's eyes went to mine and then dropped. "I know," she said. "You look like someone who would prefer to be anywhere else," I said. Her lips tightened. "Yes, that is honest," I said. Why are you here? She swallowed. Mrs. Kincaid asked me, she said. Mrs. Kincaid asks a lot, I said. Do you work for her? I work for the foundation, she said. I am administrative. Administrative is what people say when they do everything and get thanked for nothing. Alan Voss, I said. Her shoulders tightened. Please. All right, I said. Then let me ask it sideways. Were you here the night he died? Her throat worked. Yes, she whispered. What did you see? Her eyes flicked to Elaine Rook. Elaine's face tightened, and she took a step closer as if to intervene. Lila's voice was small. I saw him laughing, she said. I saw him lift something. The cover, I said. She nodded. Barely. Did he eat the cake? I asked. Her head shook. Quick. No, she said, and there was relief in the answer, as if she had been waiting for someone to say it out loud. He did not eat. He lifted it, and he leaned in, and then he coughed. He coughed like he was choking, but there was nothing in his mouth. He grabbed his chest. He fell. That matched Harlan's story. It also put a nail in Mrs. Kincaid's version, which meant Mrs. Kincaid had been telling herself a lie because the truth was uglier. Did anyone touch the plate after? I asked. Lila hesitated. Dexter did, she said. Harlan, across the room, did not react, but I saw his jaw tighten. What did he do? I asked. He put it back, she whispered. He put the cover back on quickly. He told everyone to step away. That is protection, I murmured, and Lila flinched, as if the word hurt. Elaine Rook stepped in, then smiled sharp. Mr. Goodwin, she said. Lila is upset. Perhaps you could question someone else. Perhaps, I said. But I like questions that get answered. Elaine's eyes hardened. You are being insensitive. Wrong, I said. I am being thorough. Lila whispered. Stop. And her voice was not a request. It was a plea. I nodded. All right, I said softly. One more. Who told you not to touch the slice before tonight? Her eyes widened. She looked at me, then at Elaine, then away. Elaine's smile froze. Lila whispered. Alan told us. That is interesting, I said. Elaine's voice cut in. That is nonsense. Is it? I asked. Alan Voss told staff and guests not to touch a slice of cake at Mrs. Kincaid's parties. That is a peculiar instruction from a donor. Lila's eyes filled. He said it was tradition, she whispered. He said it was important. He said it showed respect. Respect for whom? I asked. She shook her head. I do not know. But she did know something, because her gaze slid to Harold, and it did not stop there. It slid past him to Ken Weller, the advertising man, who had just drifted closer to Mrs. Kincaid. Ken's hand hovered near her elbow in a way that was not friendly. It was controlling. Mrs. Kincaid's chin lifted. Her smile sharpened. She was listening to Ken, but her eyes were not on him. They were on the cake table. I moved away from Lila, because pressure applied too long breaks the wrong things. I went to Mrs. Kincaid. Mrs. Kincaid, I said quietly. Mr. Wolfe wants the guest list from the night Alan Voss died, and the staff list, and the bakery order records. Her mouth tightened. Of course he does. Also, I added, who chooses the slice that remains? Her eyes flicked. Nobody chooses it just. It is chosen, I said, not by chance. She stared at the covered plate, and for a second her composure wavered. Alan used to stand here, she whispered. He used to make a point of it. He would tell jokes about the slice and tell everyone it was bad luck to take it. Bad luck, I said. Did he say why? Her jaw clenched. He said it was for someone who could not be here, she said. He said it was a courtesy with teeth, I said. She looked at me sharply. What do you mean? I mean courtesy can be a leash, I said. Who was the slice for, according to Alan Voss? Her eyes widened, then narrowed. He never said, she admitted. He let it hang in the air. That was the trick. Let the room fill in the meaning, and the meaning becomes everyone's responsibility. From the corner of my eye, I saw Pilar move toward the cake table with a tray, and I stiffened. Then I saw she was collecting empty glasses from the side, not touching the cake. Even so, her route took her close, and as she passed, her gaze dropped to the fork spacer. Her fingers twitched. She wanted to fix it. Staff want things neat. The fork made it look sloppy. I stepped in her path gently. "Pilar," I said, "leave that fork." Her eyes flashed. "It is not correct," she said. "Correct is the enemy of safe," I said. Her lips pressed into a line, but she nodded and moved away. That was another protector, not of the slice, but of order. That mattered. A person who wants to tidy a dangerous detail can be as dangerous as the person who set it. Then Harold moved again, not toward the fork this time, but toward Harlan. They faced each other near the bookshelf, voices low but tense. I drifted closer, close enough to hear without looking like I was listening, which is the polite way to eavesdrop. "This has gone too far," Harold said. Harlan's reply was cold. "It went too far when Voss died." Harold's jaw worked. "You keep saying that as if it proves something." "It proves motive," Harlan said. "Motive for what?" Harold snapped. "For control," Harlan said. "For keeping your hands on the Foundation's money, for keeping names out of daylight." Harold's face reddened. "You are making accusations." "I am making observations," Harlan said, "like Wolfe." At that, I stepped in. "Leave Wolfe out of your personal quarrels," I said pleasantly. "He charges for that." Harold turned, forcing a laugh that did not reach his eyes. "Goodwin," he said, "you are letting this fellow turn a party into a courtroom." "It was not me who brought a note and cupcakes," I said. "And it was not me who tried to move a fork." Harold's eyes narrowed. "So you think I did?" "I think you wanted to," I said. Harlan's pale eyes stayed on Harold. "He wants it sealed," he said, as if reciting a fact. Harold's voice dropped. "You are deranged," he said to Harlan. "Perhaps," Harlan said, "but I am alive." The words hung there ugly and sharp. That was when the room shifted again. Not in volume, but in direction. Heads turned toward the foyer. The door had opened quietly. A man had entered without the doorman's announcement, and without Bly's flourish. He wore a dark coat and held no pastry box. He stood just inside as if he had been in the apartment before and did not need permission. His gaze went straight to the cake table. Then it went straight to the upside-down plate. Then it went straight to the fork. His expression did not change, but his eyes tightened, and that was enough to tell me he had come for the arrangement, not for the refreshments. Mrs. Kincaid saw him and stiffened. Harlan saw him and went very still. Harold's face went pale. The man took one step forward. "Mrs. Kincaid," he said calmly, "I believe something of mine is being mishandled." His voice was polite. His tone had teeth, and his eyes fixed on the covered slice told me that Chapter 3 was already walking into the room. Chapter 3. The dead man in the car. After midnight, the party thinned the way ice thins in a glass, not with drama, but with surrender. One by one the guests collected coats, gathered handbags, and retrieved their public faces from wherever they had set them down. Taxis were summoned. Drivers waited. Tired pearls blinked under hallway lights. Mrs. Kincaid stood by her door and said the correct words in the correct tone, as if etiquette were a protective charm. It was not. I left when the room had reached that exhausted point where people stop pretending they are having fun and start pretending they are not relieved it is over. The covered slice remained on the table. Harlan remained within 5 feet of it. Pilar remained within 5 feet of Harlan. Harold remained across the room, watching all of them. Lila remained near the sofa, folded inward like a note that had been read too many times. Elaine Rook hovered near her, vigilant as a nurse. And the new man, the one who had come in without a flourish, remained by the foyer as if he were waiting for the house itself to speak. Mrs. Kincaid had tried to usher him out with a smile that was tight enough to crack. "Mr. Frayne," she had said, as if she were pleased to see him. Frayne had smiled back, polite, patient, and utterly unmoved. "I am not here for pleasantries," he had replied. "I am here for what belongs to me." "What belongs to you," Mrs. Kincaid had said, voice thinning, "is not in my home." Frayn's gaze had traveled to the cake table, to the upside-down plate, to the fork that kept the seal imperfect. "It is in your home," he had said softly, "and it is being mishandled." That was when I decided I had extracted as much as I could without Wolfe's weight behind me. My job now was to bring him facts, not to provide entertainment for a room full of nervous donors. Outside, the street air was cold enough to make the city smell clean, which is always a lie in New York. 2 blocks of walking took me past a closed flower shop, a late-night deli with bright lights and bored customers, and a stretch of parked cars that looked like sleeping animals. I was halfway to my own taxi when I heard someone call my name. "Goodwin." I turned. Dexter Harlan was coming toward me with the steady pace of a man who does not run unless he is chasing something important. He stopped under a street lamp. The light made his face look harder, more carved. "You left," he said. "I do that when parties are over," I said. "You should try it sometime." "I stayed until the last guest," he said. "So did Frayn." "And now you are here," I said. "Do you want to walk me to my cab, or are we about to have a conversation with teeth?" Harlan's mouth tightened, as if humor were a language he had once learned and then forgotten. "Frayn is dangerous," he said. "Who is he?" I asked. "Besides a man who walks into apartments as if he pays the rent." Harlan hesitated. Then he said, "Calvin Frayn, he is a fixer." "A fixer for whom?" Harlan's pale eyes held mine. "For people who do not want their names spoken," he said. That was a useful description, if not a comfortable one. "And what does he think belongs to him?" I asked. Harlan looked past me at the line of parked cars. "The ritual," he said, "the leverage, the thing that keeps Marjorie Kincaid compliant." "Compliant about what?" Harlan's jaw flexed. "About the foundation," he said. "About the money, about where it really goes." "You said that earlier," I replied. "So tell me now why you care." His eyes narrowed. "Because Voss was going to expose it," he said. "Because he died. Because if this continues, someone else dies. Perhaps Marjorie, perhaps her staff, perhaps one of the fools who thinks bravery is a joke." I studied him. His intensity looked genuine, but genuine intensity can still serve a purpose. Wolfe would say that sincerity is not proof, only decoration. "Then give me something solid," I said. "Give me a name besides Frayn. Give me an account. Give me a fact." Harlan's expression did not change, but his voice dropped. "The slice is a signal," he said. "It tells Marjorie that she is being watched. It tells her that the arrangement remains. It tells her that if she defies it, she will be punished." "By whom?" I asked. Harlan's eyes flicked. "Harold," he said. "That hit. Not because it surprised me, but because it was direct." "Harold what?" I asked. "Harold Quayle," he said. "He's counsel for the foundation. He is also counsel for several people who should not be connected to art in any honest way." "You think Quayle arranged Voss's death?" I said. "I think Quayle arranged the message," Harlan said. "Frayn arranges the enforcement." "And you," I said, "arrange the heroics." His gaze snapped to mine. For the first time, something like anger surfaced. "I arrange survival," he said. "Fine," I said. "Then survive long enough for Wolfe to talk to you." I stepped into the street and raised a hand for a cab. One stopped quickly, as if it sensed trouble and wanted to be close. Harlan leaned in slightly. "Goodwin," he said, "do not let anyone touch the cover, not even you. If it seals, it can kill." "Then why did it not kill tonight?" I asked. His eyes held mine. "Because the fork stayed," he said. "Because you saw the girl under the table, because Frayn arrived late, because someone was impatient." Then he straightened, turned, and walked away into the cold, leaving his words behind like footprints. I got into the cab and gave my address out of habit, then changed it, West 35th. I told the driver. I had not planned to go straight to the brownstone, But after that evening, I wanted Wolfe's presence, the way a man wants a lock on his door. Also, Fritz would still be awake, and Fritz has a way of making the world feel more orderly, even when it is not. The brownstone on West 35th Street looked the way it always looks, solid and stubborn, a dark brick refusal amid the city's restless glitter. When I entered, the familiar smells met me, polished wood, coffee, and the faint, disciplined fragrance of orchids from the plant rooms upstairs. Fritz appeared in the hallway, immaculate, calm and mildly disapproving of my hour. "Archie," he said, "you have had a late evening." "I have had a late cake," I said. "Is Wolfe awake?" "In the office," Fritz said. "He said you would return with trouble." "His optimism is touching," I said, and went upstairs. Wolfe sat in his chair, as he always does when he is receiving the world. The desk lamp cast a steady light over his papers. His expression was heavy with irritation, the kind he reserves for being forced to consider other people's foolishness. "Well," he said without greeting, "you are intact." "So far," I said. "That might change." I gave him the facts as I had them, including Bly's note, Frayn's entrance, Harlan's warnings, and the name Calvin Frayn. Wolfe listened without interruption, fingertips pressed together. When I finished, he gave a sound that was not approval. "A ritual," he said. "A ritual with frosting," I said. "A ritual with control," Wolfe corrected. "You have not yet told me why Mrs. Kincaid tolerates it." "Because she is afraid," I said. "Because she thinks she watched a man eat cake and die." "And did he?" Wolfe asked. "No," I said. "Lila said he lifted the cover, leaned in, coughed, grabbed his chest, and fell." "Harlan says the same." Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then the cake itself is not the delivery," he said. "The space is." "Like a trap," I said, possibly. Wolfe replied. "You have not brought me a sample." "I left it under a plate in an apartment full of rich people," I said. "You are welcome." Wolfe snorted. "And this Frayn," he said. "Describe him." "Polite," I said. "Quiet. Confident, the kind of man who makes rules and expects them obeyed." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Then we shall acquire him," he said. "At midnight?" I asked. "I can offer him a cupcake." Wolfe ignored that. "You will go to sleep," he said. "Tomorrow you will obtain the guest list from the night of Voss's death, the staff list, and the bakery order records. You will also discover who Calvin Frayn works for. That last one is always easy," I said. "I will ask him." Wolfe's eyes fixed on me. "Do not be frivolous. This matter is already contaminated by foolish theatrics." "Agreed," I said, "but at least tonight nobody died." Wolfe opened his mouth to reply. The phone rang. Wolfe looked at it as if it had insulted him personally. Then he reached, lifted the receiver, and said, "Wolfe." I watched his face change as he listened. The irritation remained, but something else joined it, alertness, and a kind of cold satisfaction that means the world has provided an additional piece. He hung up slowly. "A man is dead," he said. "That is usually how these nights end," I said. "Not in the apartment," Wolfe said. "In a car, 2 blocks from Mrs. Kincaid's building. The police have been notified. Mrs. Kincaid has been notified. And Mr. Kramer has been notified." Inspector Kramer's involvement always makes trouble official. It also makes it harder to ignore. "Who is dead?" I asked. Wolfe's eyes held mine. "Calvin Frayn," he said. For a moment, even I stopped being witty. "Found slumped in his car," Wolfe continued, voice steady. "No robbery, no struggle, a quiet ending, a face that looks surprised." I exhaled. "Courtesy can kill," I murmured. Wolfe's eyes flicked. "Do not phrase it as if it is poetry," he said. "It is a homicide, or a convenient heart attack," I said. Wolfe's mouth tightened. "The police will determine which," he said. "Kramer is on his way to the scene. He expects you." "Of course he does," I said, already reaching for my coat again. "At least it saves me sleep." Wolfe leaned back, heavy and displeased. "Archie," he said, "you will not contaminate the investigation with your usual propensity for improvisation." I will improvise carefully, I said. Wolfe grunted, which was as close to permission as he gives. 10 minutes later, I was in another taxi heading back uptown, the city sliding past in smeared lights. New York after midnight has a different tone. The noise drops. The streets look more honest, because fewer people are performing on them. It is the hour when crimes feel less like plots and more like habits. 2 blocks from Mrs. Kincaid's building, a small knot of police cars and an ambulance sat by the curb. Lights washing the brownstone fronts in red and blue. A few curious pedestrians lingered at a polite distance, drawn by the oldest New York entertainment, which is other people's disaster. Kramer spotted me as soon as I stepped out of the cab. He had the posture of a man who has been standing in the cold too long and resents everyone who is warm. "Goodwin," he barked. "You were there tonight." "Guilty," I said. "Who called you?" "Mrs. Kincaid," he said. "Then the doorman, then a patrol car. Your boss too, if you can believe it. He called and told me you would stick your nose in, so I might as well aim it." "That is Wolfe," I said. Kramer jerked his head toward a dark sedan parked along the curb. The driver's side window was fogged slightly. The interior light was on. "See for yourself," Kramer said. I approached. An officer stood aside. The door was open now. Calvin Frayne sat in the driver's seat, slumped slightly, head tilted toward the window, as if he had fallen asleep mid-thought. He was neat, coat collar straight, tie still in place. His hands rested in his lap as if he had arranged them before losing interest in being alive. No blood, no bruises, no signs of a fight. His face did look surprised. Not terrified, not pained, just faintly offended, like a man who had expected the world to be more cooperative. Kramer's eyes narrowed. "None," he said. "No broken glass, no sign of anyone else in the car, wallet intact, watch intact. He is dead as last week's newspaper, and he looks like he died politely." "Which makes it ugly," I said. "Which makes it tricky," Kramer corrected. "The me will tell us more. For now I want to know what happened at that party." "You will get my report," I said. "But tell me who found him." "The doorman," Kramer said. Frayne walked out, got into his car, sat there. 10 minutes later, the doorman saw he had not driven off. Came over. Found him like this. 10 minutes, I repeated. Kramer nodded. Fast. Fast suggests poison gas or something delivered efficiently. I leaned into the car and sniffed lightly. Nothing strong. No obvious chemical bite. Just the faint stale smell of leather, cologne, and city cold. "Search the back seat?" I asked. Kramer's mouth twisted. "We did," he said. "That is why I called you closer, because you were at a cake party." I looked on the back seat, placed neatly near the center. Was a small box, the kind restaurants provide for napkins. It was not expensive. It was plain. It looked out of place among Frayne's tidy interior. "What is that?" I said. "A napkin box," Kramer said. "Empty of napkins." "Then why keep it?" I asked. Kramer pointed. "Open it." I did. Inside, instead of napkins, were crumbs. Not a lot, a careful amount, as if someone had collected them, stored them, and then forgotten to throw them away. They were golden, fine, and oddly specific. Not the big ragged kind you get from a cookie. These were uniform, like something deliberately made to crumble in a certain way. They looked less like leftovers and more like evidence someone tried to hide with a smile. I touched one with my fingertip. It stuck slightly, as if it had been in contact with frosting or grease. "From cake," Kramer said. "Not just any cake," I murmured. "Carrot cake has spice flecks. These are too plain." Kramer watched me. "So what are they from, Professor?" I looked closer. The crumbs were pale gold with a slight sheen. They reminded me of something I had seen on Mrs. Kincaid's table earlier, something that was not cake, the canapes. Specifically, the little toasted pastry shells that held savory fillings. They crumble into fine, neat flakes when broken. They also look innocent. "In the apartment," I said slowly, "there were pastry shells catering, similar texture," Kramer grunted. And someone brought this box from the party, I said. Or someone brought crumbs that matched the party. Could be, Kramer said. Or it could be a message, like your slice. I looked at the crumbs again. If they were a message, they were a strange one. I straightened. Did you find anything else? I asked. Kramer's eyes hardened. We found a folded card in his inside pocket, he said. No signature, one sentence. He handed it to me with 2 fingers, as if it might bite. I read it. Manners are mandatory. That was all. I looked up at Kramer. Someone is enjoying himself, I said. Kramer's face darkened. Someone is playing games, he said. And you are in the middle of it. I was in the middle when I walked into a room afraid of a slice of cake. I said, now I am just more informed. I looked back at Frayne, neat as folded laundry. Harlan had said he was dangerous. Now he was dead. Either Harlan had been right about the stakes, or Harlan had been right about something else. Who would want Frayne dead? I asked. Kramer snorted. Who would not, he said. But motive is not enough. We need method. I nodded toward the napkin box. Bag that, I said. Jet it to the lab. If those crumbs have anything on them, it will matter. Kramer's eyes narrowed. You think crumbs killed him. I think crumbs are how someone wants us to think, I said. But I also think someone went to effort to preserve them. That means they matter to somebody. Kramer stared at me for a moment, then said, You should not be telling me how to do my job. I agree, I said, but you keep inviting me. He grunted, which is the police version of agreement when they do not want to admit it. I stepped back from the car, the cold air biting my cheeks. The street was quiet, except for the hum of idling engines and the murmur of officers. 2 blocks away, Mrs. Kincaid's building stood tall and dark, like a polite fortress. Inside it, a covered slice of cake still sat on a table. A fork still held the seal open, if Pilar had not removed it. A room full of people had dispersed, carrying fear and gossip home, like party favors. And now the man who had come to claim ownership of the ritual was dead in his car, with a napkin box full of crumbs on his back seat, and a card in his pocket telling us that manners were mandatory. If courtesy was the weapon, then the killer was not going to be sloppy. He was going to be neat, careful, and smiling. He was going to make his violence look like etiquette. I took out my phone and called the brownstone. Wolfe answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting. It is Archie, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. Frayne is dead, I said. No signs of struggle, but there is a napkin box on the back seat. It is full of golden crumbs, and there is a card in his pocket that says, Manners are mandatory. There was a pause. I could hear Wolfe's mind moving heavy and precise. Crumbs, he said at last. Yes, I said, crumbs that look chosen, not accidental. Then they are not crumbs, Wolfe said. They are a statement or a sample or both. And Frayne? I asked. Wolfe's voice was calm, but it had turned colder. Frayne's death, he said, changes the direction. The enforcer has been removed. Therefore, either the employer has lost control, or the employer has decided to sever a thread. Which is it? I asked. That, Wolfe said, is what we will discover. You will return, with every detail you can extract from Kramer and from Mrs. Kincaid and Archie. Yes? Do not touch the slice, Wolfe said. I was not planning to eat it, I said. Wolfe's reply was a low sound of disgust, and then he hung up. I stood on the curb, phone in my hand, looking at the quiet car with the dead man inside. Somewhere in the city, someone had planned this, executed it, and left behind a napkin box of crumbs like a dainty calling card. The killer had manners and teeth. Chapter 4. Wolfe reads the cake like a confession. By 10:30 the next morning, the brownstone on West 35th Street was doing what it does best, which is pretending the city outside is an optional rumor. The front room looked calm enough to be in a museum. The carpet dignified, the chairs waiting like loyal servants, and the air carrying that faint, disciplined perfume that floats down from the plant rooms when Theodore is at work. It would have been perfect if not for the cardboard cake box sitting on the hall table like a guest who had arrived uninvited and refused to leave. It came in the usual way such things come into Wolfe's house, by my hands and Fritz's disapproval. "You brought it in," Fritz said, as if the cake box had tracked mud on the rug. "I did not bake it," I told him. "I merely escorted it." "You escort trouble," Fritz said. "It is your vocation." "That is why I am cheerful," I said, and carried the box into the office. Wolfe looked at it as soon as I stepped in, which was proof that even a cake box cannot sneak past his attention when it has been advertised as evidence. He was at his desk, large and immovable, a man designed by nature to sit in judgment. The morning mail lay unopened beside him, because he had decided there were better uses for his time than reading other people's problems. On the side table behind him sat his orchid schedule, neat and strict. The kind of thing that makes you believe chaos is something Wolfe merely tolerates out of pity for the rest of the world. "This," he said, pointing with one thick finger, "is not breakfast. It is not even safe," I said. "Kramer signed it out to me for transport. Technically, it is a corpse accessory." "You did not want it in the dining room," I said. Fritz would have resigned on moral grounds. Fritz, lingering in the doorway with a tray that held coffee, made a sound that suggested resignation was still on the menu. Wolfe ignored him. He ignored most things until he chose not to. "Set it there," he said. I put the box on the end of Wolfe's desk, careful not to jostle it. It felt ridiculous, treating dessert like nitroglycerin, but after the previous night, I had learned that politeness can hide many sins, and frosting is a polite disguise. Wolfe did not open the box immediately. That would have been too human. He looked at it as if it were a witness who had not yet decided whether to lie. Then he rang the bell. Fritz entered, set the coffee down, and looked at the box again with a quiet grief that was mostly aimed at me. "Yes, sir," Fritz asked. "Bring me," Wolfe said, "a magnifying glass, a ruler, and the small scale." Fritz's eyebrows rose. "For cake, for homicide," Wolfe said. Fritz did not argue. That is one of the reasons Wolfe keeps him. He left and returned promptly with the requested tools, setting them on the desk as if he were laying out surgical instruments. Wolfe adjusted himself slightly in his chair, a slow shift of bulk. He put on his glasses. "Archie," he said, "tell me precisely what you acquired." "The cake from Mrs. Kincaid's apartment," I said. "Carrot cake, same bakery, same standing order. It was cut. One slice was left. The slice was covered with an upside-down plate, held slightly open by a fork. A man named Calvin Frayne arrived and implied the arrangement belonged to him. After midnight, Frayne was found dead in his car 2 blocks away. No struggle. In the back seat, a napkin box containing fine golden crumbs. In his pocket, a card that said, "Manners are mandatory." Wolfe's eyes did not blink. "And the cake knife, also acquired," I said. "Mrs. Kincaid provided it." Pilar swore it was the only one used. I did not ask her if she swore on a Bible. Wolfe nodded once, which in his language means proceed with the physical. He opened the cake box with the calm of a man opening a file folder. The smell rose at once. Cinnamon and sugar, and that hearty sweetness carrot cake has when it is pretending to be wholesome. Wolfe inhaled once, then stopped, as if he had drawn a line between smelling and enjoying. "A cake," he said, "is a confession if one knows how to read it." I sat in the red leather chair, notebook ready. Wolfe likes to pretend my presence is incidental, but he uses my eyes and my memory the way a general uses maps. He may not like to admit it, but he does not like to do without it. Wolfe's gaze went to the cut surface. Several slices were missing, and one wedge remained, the notorious one intact. Mrs. Kincaid had not dared throw it away. Kramer had bagged it, tagged it, and delivered it to me with the expression of a man who resents having to treat pastry seriously. Wolfe did not touch the slice. He did not taste anything. He did not even lean close enough to look foolish. He examined it from the distance of reason. He took the ruler and measured the angle of the cut lines. "Observe," he said. I am observing, I replied. The slices are not uniform, Wolfe said. They are close, but not identical. This indicates they were cut by a human hand, not by a guide. Mrs. Kincaid's kitchen is not a factory, I said. Indeed, Wolfe said. Now note the remaining slice. It is slightly wider at the outer crust than the adjacent cuts would suggest. I leaned in, careful not to breathe too hard. He was right. It was not a dramatic difference, but it existed. The remaining slice, the one that never moved, was a shade larger, an extra thin sliver of cake, perhaps no more than a quarter-inch at the crust, but enough to change its mass. Wolfe lifted the small scale and set a clean sheet of paper on it. He did not remove the slice. He weighed that fragment, then cut a fragment of identical size from the notorious slice, taking care to match dimensions. He weighed that too. Difference? I asked. Yes, Wolfe said. Slight, but consistent with the larger wedge. The portion designated to remain was cut with intention. Designated, I said. That makes it sound official. It is official, Wolfe said. Official within the ritual. He set the scale aside and picked up the magnifying glass. He examined the top frosting surface. I expected him to look for a puncture or a smear, the kind of crude tampering you see in stories about poisoning. Wolfe looked for something else. The frosting has been disturbed, he said. It looks perfect, I said. That is because you are not looking, Wolfe replied. He pointed with the tip of a pencil. Here, a shallow line, almost invisible, where a thin object has pressed the frosting and lifted away. Not a knife, not a finger. Something narrow and smooth. It has made a faint channel. I leaned closer, and there it was. A tiny track, like a thread had been laid on the frosting and removed. A wire, I guessed. Possibly, Wolfe said. Or a strip of waxed paper, or a thin ribbon. To leave residue, I said. Or to remove residue, Wolfe corrected. He sat back slightly, then reached for the cake knife. The knife was plain kitchen steel, not fancy but sharp enough. It had been washed. Mrs. Kincaid would not have left a dirty knife on her table any more than she would have left a guest's insult unaddressed. Wolfe held it by the handle without hesitation. He was not afraid of contamination in the way a nervous man is. Wolfe's caution is intellectual. He assumes danger, but he does not flinch from it. He angled the blade toward the light. Fritz, Wolfe said, without turning his head. Yes, sir, Fritz called from somewhere in the house. Bring me, Wolfe said, cotton swabs and a small bottle of alcohol. There was a pause. Then Fritz's footsteps. I could almost hear Fritz's thoughts. In a sane world, a man would ask for brandy with cake, not alcohol and swabs. Fritz returned promptly and set the items down, his eyes still fixed on the cake, as if it might leap and bite him. Wolfe dipped a swab lightly in alcohol and ran it along the blade. Then he held the swab to the light. At first it looked clean, then Wolfe rotated it slightly, and the fibers caught a faint sheen. An oily film, he said. From butter? I asked. Wolfe gave me a look that could freeze soup. From butter, he repeated, as if I had offered him a child's explanation for a sophisticated crime. If it were butter, it would be distributed along the blade, especially near the broad section where resistance is greatest. Instead, the film is concentrated near the tip. He swabbed again, more carefully, and this time he held the swab closer to my eyes. The sheen was there, faint but real. Enough for one cut, I said. Wolfe nodded. Exactly. Not the whole dessert. One slice was meant to be different. Different is never accidental. He set the knife down and clasped his hands, staring at the cake as if it were a defendant who had just contradicted itself. I wrote, oily film, tip of knife, one cut. What kind of oil? I asked. That, Wolfe said, is for the laboratory, but we can infer function. The oil was applied to the knife before cutting the designated slice. It is therefore part of the ritual's mechanism. To poison, I said. To deliver, Wolfe corrected. Poison is merely one method of delivery. He leaned forward again and examined the cut surfaces of the cake where the missing slices had been. He did not touch them. He simply looked. The crumb structure, he said. Carrot cake is porous. It absorbs. A liquid applied to a knife tip could be introduced into the interior with one clean insertion, leaving minimal surface trace. The slice could appear untouched. And if the danger is in lifting a cover, I said, how does oil on a knife fit? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. It indicates there are two possible methods, he said. One for intimidation, one for execution, or one for execution and one for misdirection. The cover ritual could be a theater. The knife is the instrument. You think Alan Voss was killed by the knife, not by the covered plate, I said. I think Alan Voss may have been killed by what he inhaled, Wolfe said. But I do not accept that this is the only technique employed. Criminals are not bound to one device. They are bound to results. He paused, then added, also, your witness, Lila, says he lifted a cover and coughed. That is compatible with a volatile irritant. But it could also be compatible with panic if he believed he had triggered a trap. Fear can accelerate a weak heart. That is cheerful, I said. It is precise, Wolfe replied. He turned his gaze to me. Tell me about the crumbs. The napkin box in Frayn's back seat, I said. Golden crumbs. Fine uniform. Kramer thinks cake. I think pastry shells from the canapes. Wolfe's expression remained neutral, which is not the same as calm. Neutral means he is fitting pieces together. Bring the napkin box, he said. I do not have it, I said. Kramer has it. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Then procure it, he said. I will tell Kramer you demand crumbs for breakfast, I said. Wolfe ignored that too. He stood, which is always an event because Wolfe does not waste movement. He walked to the window and looked out at West 35th Street. Cars moved below, horns occasionally punctuating the air. The city doing what it does, insisting it is alive, no matter what is found in parked cars. Then he spoke, not to the window, but to the case. Calvin Frayn's death, he said, is too convenient. Convenient for whom? I asked. For the employer, Wolfe said. A fixer knows too much. If he is dead, someone has decided either to silence him or to frame him. You think Frayn was framed, I said. It is plausible, Wolfe replied. If the ritual is connected to the Foundation's finances, then the person who benefits most from control would benefit also from a scapegoat. A dead man is the best scapegoat because he cannot contradict. I nodded slowly. Harlan says Harold Quayle is involved, I said. Wolfe's eyes flicked. Harlan is eager, he said. Eagerness is often ambition. You do not trust him, I said. I trust no one, Wolfe replied. I verify. He returned to his chair and picked up the knife again, studying it like a word in a difficult text. Archie, he said, who cut the cake at Mrs. Kincaid's party last night. Pilar, I said, housekeeper, also a nervous caterer assistant present in the kitchen. And who supplied the knife? Wolfe asked. Mrs. Kincaid, I said, her kitchen. Then the oil film could have been applied at any point, Wolfe said. Before the cake arrived. After it arrived, before cutting, during cutting, we must narrow it. How? I asked. Wolfe's eyes held mine. By removing the luxury of anonymity, he said. People commit crimes easily when the setting is vague. We will make it specific. He rang the bell. Fritz appeared at once, as if he had been waiting outside the office like a well-trained guardian. Yes, sir. Telephone Inspector Kramer, Wolfe said. Tell him I require the napkin box found in Frayn's car, and I require it today. Also tell him that if he refuses, I will explain to the district attorney why the police are incompetent. Fritz's mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile. Yes, sir, he said, and left. I looked at Wolfe. Kramer will love that. I do not seek his love, Wolfe said. I seek his cooperation. He gestured to the cake. Now, he said, we must determine what is different about the designated slice. I thought you did, I said. It is wider, it has a faint frosting channel, and the knife tip carries oil. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. "Those are observations," he said, "not conclusions." He leaned in again, examining the notorious slice's crust edge. "Archie," he said, "do you see this?" I leaned. "Maybe," I said. "You will have to translate into English." He pointed to the crust. "A minute indentation," he said, as if something pinched it lightly, not enough to break it, enough to mark it. "A clip," I said. "Or tongs." "Or a small clamp," Wolfe said, "to hold a thin strip against it, or to attach a thread. This slice has been handled differently. Different like a suspect wearing frosting for an alibi," I said. Wolfe stared at me for a beat, then made a sound that might have been approval if Wolfe approved of anything. "Exactly," he said. "The cake is being used as a prop, but the prop has been prepared." He sat back and steepled his fingers. "Now we must ask," he said, "what the prop accomplishes. Intimidation, obedience, distraction, murder, or all of these." "That is a lot for dessert," I said. "It is not dessert," Wolfe replied. "It is coercion." The phone rang again, the house line this time, not the office line. Fritz answered somewhere downstairs. I heard his voice, muffled, then footsteps. He appeared at the office door, expression controlled. "Mr. Wolfe," Fritz said, "Inspector Kramer is on his way, with the napkin box." Wolfe nodded once. "Good," he said. Fritz hesitated. "Also," he added, "Mrs. Kincaid is on the telephone." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Put her through," he said. Fritz transferred the call. Wolfe lifted the receiver. "Mrs. Kincaid," he said. Her voice came through faintly, tense and brisk. I could not hear the words precisely, but I could hear fear trying to sound like business. Wolfe listened without interruption, face expressionless. When she finished, Wolfe said, "Madam, you will do nothing without my instruction. You will not host another gathering. You will not discard anything. You will provide Archie Goodwin with the guest list from the evening Alan Voss died, the staff roster, and your foundation's board communications regarding that period. If you refuse, you may expect further deaths. Good day." He hung up before she could respond, which is Wolfe's version of mercy. I whistled softly. "You charm them," I said. "I save them," Wolfe replied. "Charm is irrelevant." He looked at the cake again. "The killer," he said, "is confident. The killer believes manners will prevent scrutiny. The killer believes that fear will enforce silence." "Fear did enforce silence," I said. "Last night it did, until Frayne died." Wolfe nodded. "And now," he said, "fear will loosen tongues." There was a knock at the front door downstairs. Fritz's footsteps, then voices. A few minutes later, Inspector Kramer came into the office with the napkin box in a sealed evidence bag, and the look of a man who hates being summoned to a private home because it makes him feel as if the furniture is judging him. "Wolfe," he growled, "you got cake all over this thing." "There is no cake on it," Wolfe said. "Give it to me." Kramer handed the bag over reluctantly. Wolfe opened it carefully and removed the napkin box, then tipped it slightly over a clean sheet of paper. The crumbs slid out. They were exactly as I remembered. Fine, uniform, pale gold. Wolfe leaned in, magnifying glass in hand. He did not touch them with his fingers. He used the tip of a clean knife blade to separate a small pinch. "These are not carrot cake crumbs," he said immediately. Kramer grunted. "Then what are they, pastry professor?" Wolfe ignored the insult. "They are phyllo," he said. "Or something similar. Thin layered pastry consistent with canapé shells. Not consistent with cake." Kramer frowned. "So why are they in a dead man's car?" "Because someone put them there," I said. Wolfe nodded. "Yes," he said, "either to suggest he ate something or to suggest he transported something." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "You think he carried poison in a napkin box?" "I think someone wants you to think something," Wolfe said. "That is the point. The card in his pocket was not a confession, it was theater." Kramer's jaw tightened. "We will find the cause of death," he said. "The medical examiner will tell me what was in his system." "And you will tell me," Wolfe said. Kramer stared at him. "Why should I?" Because, Wolfe said evenly, you require results, and I provide them. Also because you have already wasted time treating a ritual as superstition. Kramer's face reddened slightly. I did not, he snapped. Wolfe did not blink. You did, he said. Kramer glared, then looked away. What do you want, Wolfe? Wolfe gestured to the cake knife. I want the laboratory to test that blade for residues, he said. And I want the laboratory to test these crumbs for contamination. If you refuse, you are obstructing. Kramer grunted. I will do it, he said. But this is my case. It is your paperwork, Wolfe said. Kramer's mouth twisted. He turned to me. Goodwin, he said, you are going to bring me everything you know about that party. Names, times, movements. You will get it, I said. But you will also give Wolfe the test results. Kramer snorted. You two are a pair, he said. That is true, Wolfe said, and you, Inspector, are alone. Kramer left in a huff, taking his irritation with him. Like a coat, he refused to hang up. When the door shut, Wolfe looked at me. Now, he said, we proceed. With what? I asked. With the geometry of greed, Wolfe said. A foundation, a board, money diverted, a fixer enforcing silence, and a ritual designed to keep a woman obedient. Each element has an owner. We will identify the owner. Dexter Harlan, board member. Lila, foundation staff. Elaine Rook, consultant. Grant Moffat. Gallery owner. Ken Weller, advertising. Darla Chisholm, donor. Wolfe nodded. Good, he said. You will bring them here. All of them? I asked. Enough of them, Wolfe said. To create pressure. The truth emerges when pressure is applied correctly. He glanced at the cake, still open on his desk, innocent and dangerous. And Archie, Wolfe added, voice cool. Yes. Do not permit Fritz, Wolfe said. To see you attempt to dispose of that cake in the kitchen, he will consider it sacrilege. I smiled. So you want it disposed of, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. I want it preserved, he corrected, until it has finished confessing. Outside, the city kept moving indifferent. Inside, in the brownstone, the cake sat under Wolfe's gaze like a suspect who had not yet decided whether to talk, and Wolfe, who never tastes, never rushes, never forgives sloppiness, was reading knife marks and crumbs the way other men read faces. One slice had been meant to be different. Different was never accidental. And somewhere, behind the manners and the laughter and the fast jokes, someone had counted on that difference to keep a secret alive. Chapter 5. The warning nobody admits. When I went back uptown that afternoon, I went armed the way I always do. Not with a gun, though I had one, but with a face that looks harmless and a voice that sounds amused. In certain apartments, those are deadlier than bullets. People will duck a weapon. They will stroll right into a compliment. Mrs. Marjorie Kincaid received me at 3 o'clock in a living room that looked as if it had been cleaned by a committee. The furniture sat in its places like it had been sworn in. The air held a fresh polished smell, as if someone had tried to scrub last night's fear off the walls. She was alone except for Pilar, who hovered near a doorway with her hands folded and her eyes alert. Mrs. Kincaid's greeting was correct. It was also cold. Mr. Goodwin, she said. You are early. I am never early, I told her. I am punctual. The world is late. Her mouth tightened. I suppose you have questions. Always, I said. But I will start with appreciation. Your apartment survived a small scandal last night with minimal damage to the rug. That is not amusing, she said. It would be if it was someone else's rug, I said. May we sit? She gestured with a stiff hand. We sat. She remained very upright. Upright people tend to bend later, and the sound is louder. I started with the easy thing. You handled yourself well, I said. Her eyes narrowed. Is that one of your questions dressed as a compliment? Yes, I said. How did you manage it? You were frightened. I was not frightened, she snapped. That is an answer disguised as outrage, I said. It is common in this neighborhood. Her cheeks flushed. "You have no right to speak to me that way." "I have every right," I said pleasantly. "You hired Nero Wolfe. That is a waiver." Her eyes flicked and her voice sharpened. "Mr. Wolfe was brutal on the phone." "He was gentle," I said. "He did not charge you for the lecture." That did not help. Mrs. Kincaid drew a breath as if she were about to dismiss me, then checked herself. "Pride will do that. It hates being seen losing control." "Ask your questions," she said. "I will," I said. "First, this slice ritual. You told me it began with your gatherings. You implied it was confined to your apartment." Her eyes tightened. "It is. I do not like implied," I said. "I like verified." She stared at me. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I have reason to believe the untouched slice has a history that does not belong solely to you." Her gaze flicked to Pilar, then back. Pilar's face did not change, but her shoulders grew a fraction stiffer. "That is nonsense," Mrs. Kincaid said. "Let us see," I said. "Alain Voss. He called it tradition. He said it showed respect." "Respect for whom?" She opened her mouth, closed it, and then said, "He was a manipulator." "Possibly," I said. "But manipulators borrow their tools. They rarely invent them from scratch." Mrs. Kincaid's hand tightened on the arm of her chair. "You want to talk about Alain Voss," she said. "I want to talk about what you are not saying," I replied. "The courtesy slice, the slice that no one touches, the slice that migrates to the same spot even when you tell staff to move it. If it happens, no matter who bakes and no matter who hosts, then you are not dealing with a kitchen prank, you are dealing with a rule." She stared at me as if I had slapped her with a napkin. "How would you know what happens at other gatherings?" she demanded. "I am well connected," I said. "Also, people talk when a fixer turns up dead in his car." Her face went pale, then hard. "Calvin Frayne is dead," she said. "Yes," I said, "and that is why we are speaking now, while tongues are still loose, before fear tightens them again." Mrs. Kincaid's mouth compressed. "What do you want?" "I want names," I said. "I want places. I want the history of that slice." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "History, it is cake." "It is not cake," I said. "It is a warning nobody admits. Tell me who taught your guests to fear it." She hesitated. Then she said too quickly, "No one taught them. It simply became known." "That is a lovely story," I said. "The kind people tell themselves so they do not have to name a person." Her eyes flashed. "You are insulting. I am refusing to be fooled," I said. For a long moment she held my gaze, then her shoulders sagged slightly. It was not defeat, it was exhaustion. "It did not begin here," she said at last. "That is better," I said. "Where?" "Before I had this apartment," she said. "Before the foundation was as public as it is now. There were dinners, small gatherings, donors, board members, people who mattered. They were held in different homes." "Different hosts," I said. She nodded reluctantly. "Yes." "And the slice appeared," I said. "Yes," she said, and her voice lowered. "At the end of the night there would be one slice left, untouched, always one, even if the dessert was something else," I said. Her lips tightened. "There was always cake," she said. Summoning made sure there was always cake. "Who?" I asked. Her gaze slid away, to the window, to the city beyond it. Then she said, "Alain did often, or Harold, or someone on staff. I did not notice at first. I did not think it mattered." "But it mattered," I said. Her eyes came back to mine. "It mattered when Alain insisted it mattered," she said. "He made jokes about it. He called it courtesy. He said it was a tradition of certain patrons." "Certain patrons," I repeated. She swallowed. "People who did not attend," she said. "People who preferred to remain unobserved." That was a careful phrase. She was still protecting someone, even now. "A courtesy slice for absent patrons," I said. "That sounds like a superstition invented by a man who wants to sound cultured." "It was not superstition," she said sharply. "It was compliance," I said. Her chin lifted. What do you know about compliance? I know that polite people obey rules. They do not understand because disobeying feels rude, I said. And rudeness is more frightening to them than danger. Pilar shifted slightly. That line hit her too. Mrs. Kincaid said, "You are simplifying." "No," I said. "I am stripping the frosting off." She glared at me, then looked away. "Fine," she said. "Yes, it was a rule. People treated it as a rule. If someone reached for the slice, someone would make a joke, everyone would laugh. The hand would retreat. It was done smoothly. Nobody had to say stop. And when Alan Voss died," I said, "the rule became sharper." Her face tightened. "Yes. Who hosted the gathering where the slice began?" I asked. She hesitated. "It was not one gathering," she said. "It was gradual." "That is not an answer," I said. She lifted her gaze, furious now. "Do you think I kept a scrapbook of cake?" she snapped. "Do you think I wrote down who served what dessert to which donor on which date? I have run a foundation. I have managed property. I have lived. I did not take notes on pastries." "I do," I said. That landed. She blinked, caught between annoyance and realization that my job is precisely to take notes on other people's neglect. She exhaled. "It began," she said slowly, "with a man named Roderick Prill. The name meant nothing to me, which made it valuable. Unknown names are often the hinge." "Who is he?" I asked. "He was not on the board," she said. "He was not a donor in the usual way. He was a facilitator, a man who introduced certain patrons to certain opportunities." "A broker," I said. "A respectable word," she said coldly. "Yes. And the slice was his idea," I said. "I do not know," she said. "But he was there when it became a thing." He laughed the loudest. "He watched the table, like Harlan watched last night," I said. Mrs. Kincaid's eyes narrowed. "Dexter is not part of this," she said. "You are sure?" I said. She pressed her lips together. "Dexter has been trying to undo it," she said. "That is his story," I replied. "It is the truth," she said with sudden heat. "He has been warning me for months. He told me to stop these gatherings. He told me Alan was dangerous. He told me Harold was compromised." "That is informative," I said. "When did he start warning you?" "After the audit," she said. And then she stopped, as if she had spoken too far. I leaned in slightly. "What audit?" Her eyes hardened. "The Foundation's accounts," she said. "There was an internal review. We found discrepancies." "Discrepancies is polite," I said. "Money missing." "Yes," she said, and her voice went flat. "Money redirected." "By whom?" I asked. She looked at me. "By people who knew how to write memos," she said. "That is still polite," I said. She stared at the carpet, as if it might provide an answer without involving her conscience. "Harold handles the legal structure," she said. "Alan handled donors. They were aligned. And now Alan is dead," I said. "Yes," she whispered. "And Harold," I said, "is alive and watching." Her eyes snapped up. "You think Harold killed Calvin Frayne?" "I think someone killed Calvin Frayne," I said. "And I think the killer wants us to look at Frayne as if he were the sole villain. A dead fixer is convenient." Mrs. Kincaid closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. "What do you want from me?" "I want your board correspondence around the time of the audit," I said. "I want records of who ordered cakes for these gatherings. I want the guest list for the night Alan Voss died, and for last night. And I want you to tell me where else this courtesy slice appeared." She opened her mouth to protest, then shut it. She was not stupid. She was frightened, and frightened people either fight or cooperate. She had fought enough last night. "Pilar," she said, voice tight. "Bring me the Foundation folder from the study, the audit materials." Pilar's eyes widened slightly. "Madam," she began. "Bring it," Mrs. Kincaid said, and there was steel in it. Pilar hesitated, then left. I watched Mrs. Kincaid carefully while she waited. Her posture was still upright, but her hands had begun to fidget, small movements she could not control. "You are worried about what is in those papers," I said. "I am worried," she snapped. "About what those papers will do." "To whom?" I asked. Her gaze sharpened. "To me," she said. "To the foundation, to people I have supported." "And to people you have been supporting without knowing," I said. She flinched, then recovered. "You think I am corrupt?" "I think you have been used," I said. "There is a difference. It is also a thin difference, and you do not want it to tear." Pillar returned with a thick folder. She set it on a side table with the careful motion of a person placing something that might explode. Mrs. Kincaid opened it, flipped through, and then pushed it toward me, as if she were pushing away guilt. I did not read it yet. "Paper can wait. People cannot," I said. "Now, the courtesy slice. Tell me about the other hosts." Mrs. Kincaid's face tightened. "There was a gathering on Park Avenue," she said. "At Darla Chisholm's one on Fifth Avenue, at Harold's one downtown, at a gallery event. Grant Moffat's always one slice, always untouched, always arranged with that same smug precision, no matter who baked," I said. "No matter," she agreed. "Sometimes it was a bakery cake, sometimes homemade. Once it was a flourless chocolate cake that looked like a brick. Still, one slice remained, and no one touched it." "Even when it moved," I said. "Even when it moved," she said. "That means someone was managing it," I said. "A hand behind the manners." Her jaw clenched. "Yes." "Who was always present?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Alan, Harold, often Darla, often Ken Weller, sometimes Elaine." That gave me a pattern, and patterns are Wolfe's favorite food. I leaned back. "Now I need a slip," I said. She stared. "A slip?" "Yes," I said. "People tell the truth by accident more often than they tell it on purpose. I want someone to do that." Mrs. Kincaid's eyes narrowed. "You want me to summon my guests again?" "No," I said. "I want you to summon one guest, the one who is most likely to be offended into honesty." She gave a bitter laugh. "That is half of them." "Pick the one who hates Harold," I said. Her expression shifted. "Dexter," she said. "Dexter is too prepared," I said. "He will give a speech. I want to stumble." She glared, then said, "Grant Moffat." "The gallery owner," I said. She nodded. "Grant dislikes being controlled," she said. "He dislikes Harold. He disliked Alan. He is vain enough to think he cannot be threatened." "Perfect," I said. "Call him." Mrs. Kincaid hesitated, then reached for the phone. Her voice on the call was smooth. She did not mention murder. She mentioned urgency. That is enough in Manhattan. An hour later, Grant Moffat arrived looking irritated and expensive. He kissed the air near Mrs. Kincaid's cheek and gave me a glance that tried to place me in his social hierarchy. I let him fail. "Mr. Moffat," I said, "thank you for coming." "I was in the middle of something," he said. "So was Calvin Frayne," I said. His face stiffened. "Is that supposed to be clever?" "It is supposed to be a reminder," I said. "Sit down." Grant sat with the grace of a man sitting because he has chosen to, not because he has been instructed. He crossed his legs and held his chin slightly up. Mrs. Kincaid said, "Grant, Mr. Goodwin has questions about last night." Grant's eyes narrowed. "That ridiculous cake business," he said. "Honestly, Marjorie, you indulge too much melodrama. That is outrage disguised as self-respect," I said. "It is popular." He stared at me. "Who are you, exactly?" "I am Archie Goodwin," I said. "I work for Nero Wolfe. He has a strong dislike for melodrama. That is why this interests him." Grant blinked. Even people who think they do not fear Wolfe tend to respect the name, the way people respect a large dog behind a fence. I said, "Tell me what you know about the Untouched slice." Grant laughed, quick and sharp. "It is a parlor trick," he said. "A silly tradition. It is meant to show." He stopped. He leaned forward. "Meant to show what?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes flicked to Mrs. Kincaid. Her gaze was fixed on him. Tense Grant's cheeks colored slightly. "It is a courtesy," he said. "A courtesy for whom?" I asked. He swallowed. "For the patrons," he said. "Which patrons?" I pressed. He glanced away. "For those who are not present," he said, and his voice had lost its arrogance. It was careful now. "That is the phrase Marjorie used," I said. "So you learned it from someone who taught you." Grant's jaw tightened. "Alan," he said reluctantly. "Alan Voss called it the courtesy slice. He said it was respectful to leave it." "Respectful to whom?" I asked again. Grant's eyes flashed. "You want me to name people?" he snapped. "You want me to get sued or worse?" "Worse has already happened," I said. "Calvin Frayne is dead. Alan Voss is dead. You are still sitting on a chair." Grant's hand went to his mouth. He bit his tongue, not figuratively, literally. His teeth pressed into it, and he winced. It was a reflex, like a man stopping himself from speaking. I watched him with satisfaction and a little pity. When a man bites his own tongue to stop words, those words are worth hearing. "You look like your tongue owes money," I said. Grant glared. "You think this is funny?" "I think it is revealing," I said. "You called it the courtesy slice, and then you tried to swallow the name. That tells me it is not just a dessert. It is a signal, a reminder." Grant's eyes went to Mrs. Kincaid, then to the window. "It is not my business," he said. "It becomes your business when people die," I said. "Who are the absent patrons?" Grant's shoulders tightened. "People with money," he said. "That is vague," I said. He swallowed. "People who donate through layers," he said. "People who do not want their names on programs. People who like influence without fingerprints." "Influence over what?" I asked. "Over the foundation," he said, and the words came out as if he had been holding them in his throat. Mrs. Kincaid's face went hard. "Grant," she said. He flinched at her tone. "You know it," he snapped at her. "You pretend you do not, but you know it. They lean on you. They lean on all of us. Harold makes it legal. Alan made it social. Frayne made it physical." "Who?" I said quietly. "Names." Grant shook his head violently. "No," he said. "I will not. That is suicide." "Maybe," I said. "But silence has a body count now." Grant's eyes darted. "It was called courtesy, because you do not refuse courtesy," he said suddenly, and his voice was bitter. "You do not slap away a polite offering. You do not insult an absent patron. You do not take what has been set aside. That is the trick. That is how they make you obey. They make disobedience feel rude." I sat back slightly. There it was, the mechanism in plain words. Not poison as a weapon, etiquette as a trigger. Wolfe's theory had been sharp already. Now it had an edge. "You do not know who kills," I said. Grant's mouth tightened. "I know who benefits," he said. "Who?" I asked again. He shook his head. "No," he said, and he stood abruptly, anger returning because anger is safer than fear. "I came here as a favor, Marjorie. I will not be interrogated like a criminal, because you cannot control your parties." He reached for his coat. "Grant," Mrs. Kincaid said, voice low. He paused, then looked back, eyes hard. She said, "Alan Voss died in my home. Calvin Frayne died outside it. If you know something that could stop the next death and you do not speak, you will live with it." Grant's face twitched. For a second his vanity and his conscience wrestled. "Vanity usually wins," he said. "Ask Harold," and his voice had a cruel satisfaction in it. "Ask him about the courtesy. Ask him whose courtesy he protects. He will tell you nothing, of course. But watch his face when you say the name Roderick Prill." Then he walked out. Mrs. Kincaid sat very still. Her hands trembled. I wrote the name in my notebook, though I had already heard it from her. Now I had confirmation, and confirmation is a strong spice. I stood. "Thank you," I said to Mrs. Kincaid. Her eyes were bright with anger and fear. "You are enjoying this," she accused. "I am enjoying understanding it," I said. That is the closest I get, she swallowed. What happens now? Now, I said, I take this to Wolfe. And then, she asked. And then, I said, Wolfe invites people to his office and makes them talk without tasting anything. She stared at me. You think he can stop this? I think, I said, that whoever built this ritual used manners to keep people quiet. Wolfe does not care about manners. That is his advantage. I left her apartment with the folder under my arm and the city's cold air on my face. The sidewalks were full again, New York moving at its usual pace. Everyone in a hurry to do something that would not matter in a year. 2 men were dead, and a slice of cake had become a lever. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened as I reported. He did not interrupt. His eyes stayed steady, his hands steepled, his mind doing its silent work. When I finished, he said only one thing at first. Courtesy slice, he repeated. Yes, I said. Grant said it, then bit his tongue like it owed money. Wolfe's mouth tightened. An apt image, he said. Fear disguised as manners. I told him about the history across different hosts, different bakers, the constant appearance. I gave him the names Grant had mentioned as regulars. I told him Grant's last line about watching Harold's face at the name Roderick Prill. Wolfe nodded once. This is not poison as a weapon, he said. It is etiquette as a trigger. That is what I thought, I said. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. Etiquette is the mechanism, he continued. But the mechanism requires an operator. A person must place the slice, enforce the laughter, restrain the hands, and apply whatever physical element is necessary when defiance occurs. You think there is still a physical element, I said. Yes, Wolfe said. Fear alone did not kill Frayne in 10 minutes. No, I admitted. Wolfe leaned back in his chair. Therefore, he said, the killer has 2 tools, social coercion to control the room and a discreet method to punish defiance or remove threats. The cake is convenient because it is expected. The slice is convenient because it can be made different. The knife is convenient because it touches only what is selected. I thought of the oily film near the tip. 1 cut, I said. Wolfe nodded. 1 slice, he said. 1 victim when necessary. And Frayne, I said, he was removed. Perhaps, Wolfe said, or punished, or sacrificed. We will determine which. He picked up my notebook and flipped to the names. His finger tapped Harold Quayle. Bring him, Wolfe said. Invite him, I corrected. We are still pretending we are civilized. Wolfe looked at me. Invite him, he said. And bring Dexter Harlan, Darla Chisholm, Ken Weller, Elaine Rook, and Mrs. Kincaid. Also bring Lila. That is a lot of people, I said. It is a gathering, Wolfe said. The final gathering will occur when I choose, not when they do. And when it occurs, etiquette will not protect them. I smiled despite myself. Manners with teeth, I said. Wolfe's eyes stayed cold. Teeth, he said, are for biting. We will bite. Outside the office window, West 35th Street carried on indifferent. Inside, Wolfe had taken the idea of courtesy and turned it into a weapon against the people who had used it. The warning nobody admitted was no longer a whisper around a dessert table. It was about to be spoken aloud, in Wolfe's office, where politeness is optional and the truth is not. Chapter 6. Crumbs. Don't lie. People do if you want truth in New York. You do not ask it in a drawing room. You ask it where trays get loaded and men get paid by the hour to stay invisible. Parkside events operated out of Long Island City, concrete floors and steel racks, and a supervisor named Louis Grinter, who wore irritation like a uniform. I showed him Kramer's photo of the napkin box from Frayne's back seat. Standard, Grinter insisted. Then his eyes narrowed. Wait, that base is deeper. Not standard, I said. He called over Manny Rizzo, the runner who had handled Mrs. Kincaid's job. Manny was wiry, quick-eyed, and already nervous. You refilled napkins last night, I said. If they are empty, he said. Pilot told me one looked low, so I grabbed a box from the supply crate. and topped it off. And after midnight, I said, when you came back for pickup. Manny swallowed. I collected small stuff, plates, boxes. I took a napkin box off the dessert table. I thought it was ours. Then how did it get into Frayn's car? I asked. His eyes darted. A guy in the hall, suit, nice shoes. He acted like he belonged. He opened the crate and took the napkin box. Said it was personal. Grinter cursed under his breath. I asked him to bring out older stock. In a scratched bin we found a napkin box with a faint seam around the base. Manny used a screwdriver and popped the bottom loose. There was a second lining, a shallow cavity between layers. Perfect for hiding something thin, I said. Manny stared. Like a paper strip. Exactly, I said. A strip soaked with something now missing. That explained. The crumbs in Frayn's box. Phyllo crumbs from canapé shells were easy to sprinkle. They made it look like party mess, not a delivery device. I went straight to the medical examiner. Kramer met me with the face of a man who had stopped enjoying his coffee. Hands are clean, he said. No residue, but the breath is odd. Bitter almond and peppermint. Masking flavors, I said. Not dessert. Kramer grunted. Fast acting. Fits the 10 minutes. Back at the brownstone, I gave Wolfe the whole route. Manny's crate, the unknown suited man, the false bottom box, and the Mies smells. Wolfe did not look pleased. He looked satisfied, which is colder. The crumbs, he said, tapping my notes, are a decoy. Someone wanted us staring at cake while the true dose traveled elsewhere. In the napkin box, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. Etiquette as a trigger, and concealment as a weapon. A polite object passed hand to hand, and no one admits they touched it. Fritz appeared at the door. Inspector Kramer is here, he said, and he has brought Mr. Harold Quayle. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. Good, he said. Now we will see who lies best when the crumbs do not. Chapter 7. The knife-tip trick Wolfe turned his office into a laboratory that had been forced to wear a tie. 3 knives lay on his desk, a ruler beside them, and a clean cake on a board that Fritz had surrendered with visible pain. We have an oily film, Wolfe said, concentrated at the tip. That is not kitchen chance. That is design. He marked the cake into wedges with a pencil line, so light it barely offended the frosting. Then he held a clean blade as if it were a pointer in a classroom. When a cake is cut, the tip enters first. If the tip alone carries a contaminant, the first insertion is the only true transfer. He demonstrated without theatrics. The point of the knife touched one boundary of a wedge, entered only a fraction, and withdrew. Almost nothing showed. Then he completed the cut in a way that kept the tip from re-entering, letting the broader blade follow the opened path. He repeated the motion, slice after slice, until one wedge was freed. He lifted it and set it aside. The first slice cut becomes a loaded invitation, Wolfe said. Every other slice follows a track already made. They can remain innocent. I stared at the neat wedges and felt last night's laughter echo in my head. And the untouched slice, I said slowly, is the only safe one. Wolfe's eyes held mine. Yes, that is why it must remain. It is not avoided because it is dangerous. It is avoided because it signals obedience. Do not take it unless you wish to speak forever. Speak forever, I murmured. Death is eloquent, Wolfe said. The room at Mrs. Kincaid's came back to me, the orbiting guests, the 2 fast laughs, the hands that stopped mid-reach. They were not avoiding it out of politeness, I said. No, Wolfe replied, out of obedience. I finished. Wolfe nodded once. Etiquette is the trigger, he said. It trains the room to protect the one slice that proves the rule. The conspirators keep their hands clean by keeping everyone else's hands in line. I stood, suddenly impatient to leave the calm of the brownstone for the messy truth outside it. So now, I said, we bring them here. Yes, Wolfe said. When the trick is understood, the ritual loses its power. Then people make mistakes, and mistakes confess. Chapter 8. The guest list as a ledger. I brought Wolfe paper, the way other men bring him flowers. Because paper is what makes him happy and what makes other people nervous. Mrs. Kincaid's guest lists arrived in a thick envelope. 2 sets, one for the night Alan Voss died, one for the party that ended with Calvin Frayne dead in his car. She had also included a few clipped notes from her assistant, which meant she had finally stopped pretending. This was a social nuisance, and accepted it was a war. Wolfe cleared a space on his desk with the care of a man preparing an altar. He did not shuffle the pages. He spread them, aligning corners, smoothing edges, making order out of other people's disorder. I sat opposite him and spread my own notes beside his, like a deck of marked cards waiting for the dealer. "Begin," Wolfe said. Wolfe's eyes moved across the lists, calm and heavy. When Wolfe reads, he does not skim, he weighs. I pointed with my pencil. Darla Chisholm, both nights. Ken Weller, both nights. Elaine Rook, both nights. Harold Quayle, of course. Dexter Harlan, of course. Lila, working both nights. Grant Moffat, both nights. Wolfe grunted. "And here," I said, tapping a name that had not come up in conversation, much because nobody had wanted to talk about the help. Julian Sloan listed as event coordinator. He appears on every list. Not just these 2. Mrs. Kincaid included 3 older lists from other hosts to prove the slice wasn't born in her apartment. Sloan is on all of them. Wolfe's eyes paused on the name. "Helpful," he murmured. "That is the word people use," I said. "They call him useful. They call him smooth. They call him invisible. That last one is my favorite. Invisible men are always visible to the right eyes." Wolfe's fingertips pressed together. "He is the organizer," he said. "He controls placement, timing, and the flow of service." "And the flow of conversation," I said. "I checked who always leaves early. It is consistent. The same cluster vanishes before dessert is cleared." I slid a sheet toward Wolfe, my little chart of exits and excuses. "Grant leaves early when money comes up," I said. "Darla leaves early when audits come up. Ken leaves early when names come up. Elaine stays, but she steers. She redirects. She laughs too fast." Wolfe looked at my chart as if it were a child's drawing, then nodded once, which from Wolfe is praise. "Patterns appear where patterns should not," he said. "Exactly," I said. "Also, certain guests always steer talk away from the foundation accounts. Harold does it with law talk, Ken does it with jokes, Darla does it with pity, Elaine does it with concern." Wolfe's eyes lifted. "And Harlan?" "Harlan does it with warnings," I said, "which could be noble or could be performance." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "Yes." I flipped to my notes on Calvin Frayne. "The dead man was not random," I said. "He was new to the circle. He is not on the Voss night guest list. He appears only last night. He was hungry for status and careless with rules he did not understand. He came in demanding ownership. Someone decided that kind of hunger is a liability." Wolfe stared at the lists again, then at the name Julian Sloan, then at Harold Quayle, then at Darla Chisholm. His eyes moved like a finger tracing a wire. "In a closed society, Archie," Wolfe murmured. "Etiquette is just a polite name for control." I nodded. "And the courtesy slice is their flag," I said. "A rule you obey without being told, because breaking it makes you feel like an outsider." Wolfe's voice stayed calm. "Outsiders speak," he said. "That is why they must be discouraged, or destroyed." I leaned forward. "So the guest list is not a social record," I said. "It is a ledger. It shows who pays, who profits, who keeps quiet, and who makes the machinery run." Wolfe's eyes narrowed on Julian Sloan again. "The machinery," he said, "requires an operator who is present everywhere and noticed nowhere." I smiled, because I could feel the case tightening into shape. "Do you want me to invite Mr. Sloan?" I asked. "Or do you want me to bring him?" Wolfe gave me a look that meant he preferred the second, but would tolerate the first. "Invite him," Wolfe said. "Politely, he will come. Helpful men always come when they think they are needed." Chapter 9. Another party. Same slice. New trap. Wolfe insisted on attending the next gathering. The way a general attends a war, from his chair, with a plan. and through my eyes and hands. "You will go," he said. "You will alter one element. Then you will watch the people who cannot tolerate alteration." "That covers half of Manhattan," I told him. "It covers the half that matters," Wolfe replied. Mrs. Kincaid, pale with pride and fear, agreed to hold one more small evening. She called it informal, which meant it was carefully chosen. The same polished faces returned, fewer in number but sharper in attention. Harold Quayle arrived with his lawyer calm. Darla Chisholm arrived with pearls that looked like armor. Ken Weller arrived smiling too easily. Elaine Rook arrived close to Lila, as if proximity could prevent speech. Dexter Harlan arrived watchful and stiff. Julian Sloan arrived helpful. He was the sort of event planner who appears at every gathering and never appears in anyone's story. Spotless cuffs, neat hair, hands always adjusting something that does not need adjustment. He smiled like service and watched like ownership. The cake sat in its box in the kitchen. Pilar stood over it as if it were a dangerous pet. I went to the kitchen under the excuse of offering help, which is a phrase that opens doors in rich apartments. Pilar's eyes narrowed. "You are not needed." "That is why I am perfect," I said. "Where is the knife?" She opened a drawer and took out Mrs. Kincaid's cake knife, clean and innocent looking. I did not touch it. I simply placed my wrapped replacement beside it, still sealed in its store wrapper. "We use this tonight," I said. Pilar stiffened. "Why?" "Because the other is evidence," I said, "and because somebody likes the tip of that knife too much." Her face tightened, and that told me she understood more than she admitted. I slid the original knife into an evidence envelope, sealed it, and put it in my inside pocket. Then I handed her the new knife. "Cut with that," I said. "Every slice. No changes." Pilar's lips pressed into a line, but she nodded. When I returned to the living room, I saw Sloan already drifting near the dessert table, even though dessert had not arrived. He was pretending to straighten napkins, but his eyes kept flicking to the kitchen doorway. His fingers tapped, smoothed, then tapped again. He was not hungry. He was waiting. Pilar brought the cake out, already cut. The room shifted in one small collective motion, conversations thinning, bodies angling, eyes moving. A ritual does not need a bell. It has gravity. But tonight, the ritual was wrong. The slices were evenly cut. There was no slightly larger wedge, no designated odd piece. If someone had planned a first slice trick with a treated knife tip, it had been robbed of its moment. The room felt it without knowing how, like trained ears hearing a wrong note. Sloan felt it most. His posture tightened. His hand moved before his face could decide what expression to wear. He stepped closer to the cake, as if he meant to correct an error, not serve dessert. "Oh," he said brightly, "too bright. I should serve." No one asked him to, no one needed him to. He reached toward one specific wedge. Not random, not social, purposeful. His fingers hovered, restless, then darted again, like a pickpocket reaching for a wallet. I stepped in smoothly and blocked him with my forearm. Glass raised as if I were merely repositioning myself. "Mr. Sloan," I said pleasantly. "Mrs. Kincaid has staff." His smile tightened. "I am only helping." "Helping is your hobby," I said. "Stand back." For a fraction of a second, the helpful mask slipped. Under it was not embarrassment. It was urgency. Not fear of dessert, fear of the signal breaking. Across the room, Harold Quayle's face went still, too still. Darla's hand tightened on her glass. Ken Weller laughed too loudly at nothing. Elaine shifted closer to Lila, as if to block her view. Harlan watched Sloan with narrowed eyes, like a man watching a door he expects to be kicked in. Sloan's fingers twitched again toward the cake, quick and involuntary. I leaned closer, voice low. "Tell me why you care which slice stays." His eyes met mine, and his polite smile returned by force. "I care," he said softly, "because when people ignore tradition, accidents happen." "Accidents," I echoed, thinking of bitter almond and peppermint. His hand twitched again, and this time I saw what it really was. Not appetite. a reflex to restore control. In my pocket, the sealed evidence knife pressed against my chest, like a private truth. Wolfe was not present in body, but his plan was present in the room, and the room had reacted exactly as he predicted. The ritual had been disturbed, and the man who needed it intact had moved too quickly. Chapter 10. The murderer who let Manners choose. Wolfe filled his office the way a chess player fills a board, not with noise, but with position. Kramer stood by the door, scowling. Mrs. Kincaid sat rigid. Quayle looked ready to object to oxygen. Darla shone with brittle polish. Ken smiled too often. Elaine watched Lila like a leash. Harlan watched everyone like a guard. Julian Sloane sat neat as a receipt, spotless cuffs, hands folded, help incarnate. Wolfe let silence tighten the room, then spoke. The killer did not poison cake. He poisoned a cut, then relied on social gravity to deliver it. Quayle gave a short laugh. This is absurd. Wolfe's eyes did not flicker. A cake is cut tip first. If the tip alone carries an agent, the first slice cut becomes a loaded invitation. The remaining slices can be innocent. The conspirators then leave one slice untouched as a signal, not a superstition. It is the safe slice. Insiders avoid it. Outsiders, who do not know better, reach for what looks harmless and are punished for ignorance. Mrs. Kincaid went pale. Ken's smile froze. Darla's fingers tightened on her glass. Wolfe continued, voice heavy and clean. You enforced the signal with manners, jokes, laughter too fast. Hands steered away. In a closed society, etiquette is simply a polite name for control. Kramer grunted. And Frayne. Frayne was removed by the second method, Wolfe said. The napkin box was not standard. Its base was double-lined, a cavity for something thin, a paper strip soaked with a fast agent, later missing. The crumbs were camouflage, phyllo crumbs to make it look like party mess. The medical examiner noted bitter almond and peppermint on the breath, masking flavors, not dessert. Wolfe's gaze settled on Sloane. Only one person could manage both deliveries, someone present at every event, regardless of host, with access to kitchens, knives, staff, and table placement. A helpful organizer, whom no one questions because questioning him would feel rude. Sloane's smile held, but his fingers twitched once. Mr. Julian Sloane, Wolfe said. You handled the knife tip first. You planted the oily film. You later arranged the dosing strip inside the napkin box and let Crumbs hide it. You relied on Manners to choose the victim. When Archie switched the knife, you moved too quickly, not from hunger, but from fear the signal would break. Sloane's voice stayed smooth. You have theories, Wolfe nodded. Yes, and you have a habit. You cannot tolerate disorder you did not design. Kramer stepped forward. Wolfe, I need something solid. Wolfe did not look away from Sloane. You have it, Inspector. The laboratory results. The runner's statement about the suited man taking the box from the crate. The repeated presence of Sloane at every gathering. The disruption response. Combine them, and you have a chain. Then Wolfe's verdict landed quiet and final. The weapon was not toxin, Archie. The weapon was etiquette, and the victim was selected by Manners.